Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Hi, Lucky. Hi, Sandra. Welcome in. Welcome to the first ever Science Around with MKL stream. I've got my lab coat, I've got my nerdy glasses, and I am excellently ready to share some science with you. I hope you are also ready. Kirby is also very ready to talk about science, apparently. Welcome to Not Jurassic Park. Yes, we don't talk about that. I am wearing my Mr. DNA shirt today, though, to go along with our genetics theme for today. Everything is cool when we're part of a team. Everything is awesome when you're living on a dream. Hey, that's my headphones. You'll get your cashew. Calm down. Thanks for the Kirby snack, Sandra. I appreciate that. Go, Kirby, go. Where are you gonna go? He's like, where do I go? Also, if you see in the background, Kirby's travel backpack did arrive today. It's very exciting. So I'm hoping he gets used to it soon so we can go for some cool walks in the park with Kirby. It's going to be really exciting. Mr. DNA, did you know? How are you? I am doing good, thank you. Had an awesome visit with a friend and excited to see how this goes today. I put a good amount of work into it. But I'm hopeful that it works well and it's interesting and we can have some good discussions as well. So if you folks have any questions or anything as we go through, if it's not something I know right off the bat, we'll research it, or if it's something I know, we can talk about. Opens Animal Crossing and sees Phil walking into a stereo. I have a question. Yes, Sandra. What is your question? Everybody put your hands up. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do my new overlay. I made it look better, but you know what? It's not too bad. I think I put blue in the background, but I don't mind it. Don't mind it like this. I don't mind it. But I did make one that looked a little bit better, so I'm a little sad I forgot, but oh well. We'll survive. And you guys can hear everything. You should be able to hear me and possibly a little bit of Animal Crossing music in the background currently. So hopefully you can hear both of those things. Pull this guy up. Now, this is all done through like screen capturing stuff, so if you don't, for some reason, see something that looks like what I'm talking about in this box, please let me know. Because it's all really finagled to get what I need to do. Audio is good. Excellent. Okay, what was your question? What was your question? Before we even get started. I forgot. Okay. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. And hopefully people will trickle in as we go. And I did let people know that, of course, the VOD of this will be up. And I will be posting it to the YouTube, my YouTube channel as well. So if you are not able to watch this live, you can watch the VOD later. And it's going to be totally fine. You just don't get to participate in our discussions in person. But you can always comment. Excellent question. Yes, Sandra had an excellent question. All right, so welcome to Science Around with MKL, featuring today genetics and Animal Crossing. I'm really excited to be doing these streams. I'm excited to look into more like science behind games. We're starting it. Who's this? Sandra, thank you so much for that host. I appreciate that. We will be looking into a little bit more about genetics and how that relates to Animal Crossing itself. And some of you may be really interested in this, and some of you may not. If you don't play Animal Crossing, that's totally okay. The genetics is still regular genetics, and you may learn a couple things today. It is basic genetic stuff today. So we're going to start basic, and don't worry, I will 100% come back to another genetics science around at some point because I love genetics and cell biology. So we will talk about it again in more advanced stuff at another point. Today is sort of starting with some basics again, refreshing for some of us who may not have been in science for a long time or forget a lot from your science days in school. Cole was like, "Oh, hi, Grandma, I thought you were," and I was like, "What were you gonna say, Cole?" Okay. All right, so here we go. Let me talk a little bit about what we're gonna get up to today. Click in here. So I hope you enjoy my wonderful, beautiful screen that I made here. There's myself as a scientist. I'm not entirely similar. I should have put my hair in pigtails so that we looked the same, but next time. I'll think about it next time. I do have my lab coat on, though. And two of my favorite villagers from my village, who you will meet today, Gladys and Phoebe. because they're awesome. So, hi! If you haven't met me before, you haven't been to my channel before, and you're watching this maybe on YouTube or over the VOD back later, I'm Magma Kitty Live. You can also call me Nicole or Magma. I'm a content creator as a side gig and hobby, and a science and careers teacher the rest of the time. It is summer right now, so I am done teaching for now, but I do have science kind of in my blood. It's what I'm passionate about, and I've been looking for a way to bring that into my streaming world, and this is sort of the way of doing that, is combining games and science. As a little bit of my background, if you don't know a lot about me, I have a Bachelor of Science with a focus on genetics, cell biology, and a little bit of neuroscience, and also a degree in education, of course, to be a teacher. So I have a good basic knowledge of science, but I want to put this out there as a... what am I calling this? A declaration, I would say, is you never remember every single piece of fact from your degree. I took my degree a few years ago. It's been a while since I was in a biology classroom. Also, I do have a parrot, so if you hear screaming in the background or talking, it's my parrot Kirby, if you don't know me already. So, apologies for that in advance. He likes to yell. I did take my degree a few years ago, so a lot of things I may have forgotten, and that is 100% okay. If you're a scientist, you're not going to remember everything all the time. That's what the internet is for these days. That's what my textbooks are for. So if there is a question or anything today where I don't necessarily know the answer, the biggest thing my science degree taught me was how to find said answer, research said answer in a way that is appropriate and gives us the information that we need, but also is backed by proper sources and things like that. So when we get into discussing, especially the more advanced genetics topics that I may have not learned about recently, I will 100% be relying on research that I find, and I can show you some tools as well on how to find science and peer-reviewed research papers that can back up what we're looking for. So just as that heads up, I don't pretend to know everything, and I am not afraid to say that I don't know, or that I could be wrong. So, with that being said, let's get back and check out pigtails and green hair. Yeah, it's more like, I don't know, I guess it's turquoise, but they don't really have exactly my blue hair. I feel like we're watching a TV show. So cool. Aw, I love your lab coat. Thank you so much. This lab coat, I'll tell you a bit of a story about it. When I was between my grade 11 and grade 12 year in high school, I was lucky enough to be in an internship at a cancer research center in British Columbia. And I spent the summer there during that year, and it was amazing, and very much was like made me independent and gave me that really like big passion for science. And so I got this lab coat at the end, so it is signed. So if you're like, why is it covered in writing? It's because it's signed by the people in the lab that I worked with. So just as an explanation there as well. I love that, Nicole. The thing about it being okay to not remember and know everything. 100%. My degree was a while ago. And so there's some things that I really remember and some things that if I went back and looked at it, it would be easy to pick up again. But you're not going to remember it all. Science is huge. You have that kind of brain, you're amazing, and I'm not that person. What you're discussing is exactly what I'm doing in my summer teaching work, teaching kids how to research, how to learn, and what sources are credible and valid. It is so important. A huge piece of like science communication and education is just how to find out where the right sources are. You're so right. And it's such an amazing piece of science in general, is being able to be wrong and find out why, and then be able to back it up with actual like good resources. So awesome. And it's really nice to meet you, Mr. B. Thank you for coming in. I wish I was taught that in high school. Such valuable information. Oh, 100%. And one of the courses that I was co-teaching this year, the Science for Citizens course, was really big on that. Was like, you don't have to know everything about science, especially if you're not doing science as your day-to-day job. You know, you don't have to know everything, but just knowing how to research something is so important. And especially with the news nowadays as well, right? Is like being able to tell the difference between a well-researched paper that isn't biased, because a lot of research papers, even if they're fantastic researchers, there's always a bit of bias there, and being able to determine, is this something I can use properly and quote just this paper? Should I find a couple other sources? How do I know if they're good? What's the difference between a primary research paper and like a secondary research paper? So those are all really amazing things. And that was probably my favorite part of, okay, I'm going to say this a lot, but a really good part of my degree was feeling really academic and doing the research. I don't know why, but I really like that part. So I'm excited to talk about that too. I'm working with a chemistry teacher, and he has a how to make marshmallows lab that he does that is science-y, and I suggested having the kids compare that against a random how to make marshmallows link I found on Google. 100%. That's awesome. I like that idea. It's so true. Oh, that's really neat. Actually, that'd be a really nice one to see for... I would love to do a science around cooking stream at some point. So actually a marshmallow one would be kind of cool. But I like that. That's a really good idea. Comparing the two. Similar ideas, but one is going to be backed by, you know, research or science or, you know, figuring out whether or not it is backed by research and science. I love it. So that's a quick thing about me. If you want to know any more specifics about what type of genetics I studied, what cell biology I studied, I'm going to let you know now. I love neuroscience to pieces, but it was not my top class. But I love it, and I hope we get to do a stream about that too. But I will need a lot more research on that one. Or if you want to know about my education background as well and how I'm finding that, especially with everything going on, Mr. B, I'm sure you know a little bit about this too. I wonder what your stuff is looking like, but how that's gone, I'm always happy to talk about that. And yeah, quick things as we get started too. If you are interested in chatting a bit more, you can always check out my Discord. I'll quickly post that as well. If you want to talk a little bit more about things in general. And otherwise, we're here. We're going to enjoy some science and some really, really chill Animal Crossing. And it's going to be a really good stream. So, thank you for joining. Okay. Quickly about what it's looking like today. Today's Science Around. I'm going to start off by showing off my super lame island in Animal Crossing. Some of you have seen it already. Others may not. I'm going to let you know now. It is not the most creative. It is constantly in a state of renovation for like the last 3 months. I'm working on it. So I'm going to show that off a little bit. I'll introduce you to some of my villagers just to get us in the game and remember that we're here to combine science and games together. And Animal Crossing is just such a nice chill way to end the day. So I'll show off my super lame island. I'm going to talk a little bit about why are we doing genetics as Animal Crossing? What links those two things? I'm going to give you some basics to DNA, genetics, and predicting inheritance. And we're going to talk about, then, of course, Animal Crossing flower genetics. In between the sections, I will have some science trivia questions that the first people to answer it in the chat will get to spin a wheel for channel points. Probably my treats. I should have written that as treats and not channel points because I can't reward you channel points, but I can reward you treats and you can feed Kirby. I have a few scientist spotlights today. As a heads up for that as well, I am focusing on more of our minority scientists. So right now, today, I've focused a lot on women in science. That's a really big passion of mine as well. Especially when I'm a teacher, students need to see role models that reflect who they are and so that they can place themselves in a role. There's so much to do with that I could talk about forever, but I am focusing today specifically on some women scientists in genetics. So we'll talk about 3 specific people and give you some basics on them. I don't know everything about them, but I thought it was neat to kind of profile a little bit more about them. And then we'll sort of end the day. I didn't add in anything particularly news-wise into this presentation, but we can discuss and try to see if we can look up what's happening in genetics today. What are people studying? What's the new thing right now? So we will look that up kind of at the end and chat about that if we've got some time left. And a reminder again, if you missed this one, I hope you're watching the VOD either on Twitch, and it will be uploaded to YouTube as a series there as well. I love science. Does this mean we get to work on Punnett squares? Mr. B, you are so right. You know exactly what's coming. We are working on Punnett squares. Those were my absolute favorite in high school bio. Yes. Okay. I'm really looking forward to showing you then. Some people will 100% remember these, and we're going to see how they work with our flowers in Animal Crossing. It's awesome. All right. Let's do it. Let's show off my lame island. Let me pull this up. And hopefully we can see it. It's a little quiet and dark. Okay. Oh, okay. Hold on. I'm going to show you from my house. Don't look at that yet. Run. Okay, so here's the entrance to my island. It is raining. Should we go get an umbrella? Let's go get an umbrella. This is my house. Please ignore the smattering of flowers that are absolutely everywhere. What is it? What do we say? If your desk is messy, you're more likely to be a genius or something. So if my Animal Crossing island is messy, I'm obviously real smart, right? That's what we say anyway. That's what we're gonna say. All right, we gotta find myself a cool themed umbrella for this session. I know it's a little late, so my island's a bit dark. Kind of forgot about that. This seems fitting. So we're gonna use that one. Did I move it to my pockets? Yes, I did. We're good. I use Punnett squares to teach polynomial multiplication and algebra. Nice! I don't think I've ever looked at that, but I'd be super interested to see what that's like. I do substitute teach a lot for math, but it's not actually my teaching area. Teaching area is more biology and career focused, but I love teaching math. If that's the case, then look out, Einstein, I have arrived. It's so true. I wish it was true. I wish it was super true. All right, got my umbrella. It's really, really effective. Science of umbrellas is a whole nother thing, but this, I'm telling you right now, is the most effective umbrella I've ever seen. So this obviously is my house. I would show you the rooms. Actually, I'm going to show you the upstairs. Let's go back in. Let's go back in. We're all over the place. But I am going to show you the upstairs. Mr. B might appreciate this. So please ignore the messy living room. I'll show you my favorite room of my house. It's very themed. Show the I'm not showing the basement. This is my favorite room. This is my classroom. I love it so much. Isn't it? It's nice that the windows actually have rain on them. Here's my classroom. Got my microscope. I wish I could actually have this many cool things in my classroom, but I don't actually have a classroom. But I'm pretty proud of this. Pretty proud of the setup. So there's my classroom. We're not learning in there today, though. I have set up something else for us today. I'm not showing you the other rooms. They are consistently a work in progress. Alright, pull out my effective umbrella. I see this and I think to myself, this is a teacher who is so quarantined that you brought your classroom into your attic. 100%. 100%. I am also really obsessed with dinosaurs. We know we're going to be having a science around stream at some point about dinosaurs. I have to select the right game. It might be Jurassic World, but we'll see. But we will have a dino theme. And I'm also, obviously, I love birds, so we picked some of our bird relatives here to display. So, front of my island, there's really not a lot happening going on here. I've got some villagers kind of spread out all over the place, so it's really not that exciting. I'm trying to basically have them on 4 corners in their different, like, housing areas. I was going to have them in, like, Hogwarts houses, but I think I'm going to make my own houses. So, and they're going to be bird themed. And then I'm going to give them all common rooms. So they don't really look very exciting right now. This is why I'm in a constant state of renovation, because they've been like that for like a month and a half. And I just haven't had the time to do them. This is not how we're going to look at today, just so y'all know. This is my random smattering where it began as a flower breeding area, and then I just stopped. And this is what I got out of it. So this is kind of interesting. This is like random genetics happening here. I couldn't tell you what these genetics are. Probably the blue flowers, I could tell you a bit about those. But everything else, and purple, most likely purple as well. But all these other flowers, I have no idea. Their genetics are all over the place because I threw them in a pen and let the bees do their work. But I do have a little heart pond. The roses I am also letting kind of get out of control a little bit here, mostly because I'm picking them up and taking them other places so they're growing as they can. And then of course I've just got like other areas on the island. Nothing too exciting just yet. But I will show you what I've got set up. Here's our outdoor classroom. It's a little rainy, so we probably wouldn't be teaching here. But here's my outdoor classroom I set up. I like it a lot. Also, how many of you had a brine shrimp tank, or also known as sea monkeys? I'm really interested. I think I've talked to a couple people about these, but I remember having sea monkeys. And of course I've got my fossil, and I meant to make more like flowery things to put in here, but I forgot. That's so cool. We never had that. Yeah, they're like little shrimp. And basically you can dry out these eggs of these particular creatures and package them and ship them. And then all you have to do is put them in water, and they basically reconstitute and hatch, and then you have baby brine shrimp. And I don't know, it was so weird and so marketed very strangely. It's very interesting. I don't know how to feel about it, but they're cool. It is really weird. Here's the wheel that we will spin today if you get the questions right when we do the science trivia. And if you land on our nice golden flower there, you will win some treats. Maybe 500 treats. Does that sound good? I think sounds good. I never had sea monkeys. Yeah, I think I had them once. But I remember seeing commercials for them, which is so weird. But I remember seeing commercials for sea monkeys a lot. But I remember the sea monkey episode of Rugrats. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I remember that, but that's funny. There's my other bird skeleton. I just finished this one, the pterodactyl. Just found the last piece of the pterodactyl skeleton the other day. So I had to place it because I just needed to see it. But I haven't yet figured out what I'm going to put around it. Working on it. Oh, yes, I remember that. Oh, I don't know if I remember it. Okay. But this, of course, is my garden of science that we'll be discussing today. And we'll come back to that momentarily. But we're going to talk a little bit about what that is. And there's actually an example of it occurring right now, which is perfect. So for now, this is where I am. We didn't see any villagers. I guess everybody's hiding from the rain. We saw Flick. I haven't sold him any bugs today, though, but we did see him. All right. Oh, wait. No, there's Flick again. I was like, is that a villager? But no, it's not. Garden of Science. It's my garden of science. I wish I had one. I wish I had a real garden of science. But I will satisfy myself with an Animal Crossing garden of science. Amazing. Okay, so you've seen a little tour of my very lame island. I didn't even show you all of it because it doesn't get much more exciting than this part of it. Everyone else is very creative with Animal Crossing. I'm working on it. We're going to get there. I got to push away the science for a little bit and get some creative juices flowing, but it's not happening just yet. So, let's get back to talking a little bit about the science piece of this. Hey, Ruby, how's it going? Welcome in. We're going to start out, like I said, with a introduction to genetics. DNA Fantastic. If you have not listened to the DNA Fantastic song, which Mr. B may have, but I highly doubt anybody else has probably listened to DNA Fantastic. We might end the stream by listening to DNA Fantastic. It is a rap by a science educator, I'm pretty sure. And it is, well, it's fantastic. It's DNA Fantastic. So we might end the stream by listening to that. It's really funny and awesome. It actually has a lot of detail in it that, you know, you don't really learn about in high school either, which is, it's pretty awesome. Went out for ice cream. That's awesome. What kind of ice cream? But now I'm waiting for pizza. Butterscotch Ripple. That sounds delicious. I had pizza yesterday for dinner. Today I haven't had dinner yet, but I'll probably have soup. Kirby, explain yourself. He's really mad because I got his new backpack and I've left it out. I have a feeling he went in there though, because it looks like it's a little bit off angle from where it was. But we're trying to get him used to it so we can go for a walk tomorrow. On a waffle cone with sprinkles. That sounds delicious. Don't know if I feel like ice cream, but it does sound really good. All right. So, I'm going to tell you right now as well, some of these slides have like a ton of writing on them because I've pulled them from my class material. You do not have to read it, and you don't have to understand it all. So if you see one, like, some of them I cut down pretty well, but there's a couple that I just threw information on there. Don't worry about it. I'm going to talk to you about it. You don't have to read it. This isn't class. You're okay. But most of you have probably heard of DNA, but let's talk a little bit more about it. What is DNA in general? You hear it, you know sort of the context to use it in, but what exactly is it? So, DNA is actually a type of what's called nucleic acid. So it's a molecule, it's in your body, it's pretty darn cool, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it, but mostly we're going to be talking about inheritance today. So the DNA molecule itself contains the code to every organism, every living thing has DNA, has this code, at least on Earth. We'll talk about space another time, and whether or not we think DNA is a thing in space. That would be a really cool stream. We'll talk about that maybe later. But every single living thing has DNA. We have DNA, your dog has DNA. I mean, Animal Crossing is a game, but we're assuming that Isabelle probably has DNA, and a tarantula has DNA. Everybody has it. We look really different, and because of that is why DNA is so unique. Now, what's really cool is that, yes, it's super unique, but between us and a chimpanzee, we are still like 99% similar. And that is what like blows my mind, is, DNA causes so many differences between different species, between what you and I look like, but really we are so close. There is not that much that separates a human from a human. We are so similar in DNA. Like if we're 99% similar to a chimpanzee, how close are we to each other? So close. So close. Which is really amazing. I can't wait for space episodes. It would be really fun. I would love to do. I love space. I'm not an expert. I'm not a physicist. I don't study space, but I would love to have a science around talking about space. Gotta find a good game that will show off some aspects we want to talk about, though. It was good. Loved it. Excellent. And we share approximately 96% of our DNA with a banana. Exactly. 96% of your DNA. A banana has it. That's amazing. So next time you eat a banana, be like, we're really similar, banana. You're cool. I'm cool. But I'm going to eat you because you got great source of potassium. Yeah. Very amazing. I got you. I will DM some good space games. Okay. That's fantastic. I can hear like footsteps in the Animal Crossing game, so there's obviously someone walking around us. And another type that we're not going to talk about today, but another type of nucleic acid is RNA. So we're not going to chat too much about that today. Again, I pulled this from some of my class material, which goes into a bit more depth to do with DNA replication and, creating proteins and things like that. We aren't going to get into a huge amount of that today, just like a little bit. So I'm mentioning RNA mostly because it's like, oh, it's a type of nucleic acid. Are there other nucleic acids? And the answer is yes, and RNA is an example of that, which you also have a lot of. So RNA and DNA are both found within your cells, tarantula cells, and banana cells. They exist together. And some things like viruses and such will either like have DNA or RNA. So it's both carry genetic material. Both are types of nucleic acid. That's just there for your information. I find RNA so cool. It is amazing. The amount of uses that RNA has and the amount of stuff that it does for us is so cool. So DNA replication is super cool. Translation and transcription, those are those processes. We're not going to get into a ton of that today, but if you're interested, we can definitely talk about it another time. All right. So I do want to chat a little bit in detail about what DNA looks like and how it's built. And the reason being is, one, because it's really cool. Two, it shows us how and why. Oh, free up storage space. No computer, bye. But it tells us how DNA can be so unique and how we can get so many different sequences from our DNA out of very few building blocks. So nucleic acids are made up of these building blocks called nucleotides. I have a picture here to demonstrate. So this image is just showing off a little bit more about them. There's 4 different types that we're looking at. There's actually technically 5 if you're looking at RNA, but if we're just talking about DNA, talking about 4 different ones. So they're built out of a few different things. Now, if anybody knows what DNA stands for, let me know. Of course, I know what it is, but I want to see if you folks know. If you can tell me what DNA stands for, you can spin the wheel. We're going to add in an extra trivia question right here, right now. First person to tell me, what does DNA stand for? Deoxyribonucleic acid. Oh, man. And every time I read it now, Mr. B definitely called that, so we'll spin the wheel for Mr. B. Every time I read deoxyribonucleic acid, it always comes up now in the song DNA Fantastic. It's like deoxyribonucleic acid. So good. But yes, deoxyribonucleic acid. And what this name sort of relates to, because that word doesn't mean a lot unless you know a little bit about the structure of DNA and RNA. But when we're looking at something like this piece particularly of DNA, so DNA has these nucleotides. They're made up of a few different things. A phosphate, which is a phosphorus surrounded by oxygen. They're made up of a sugar. Kirby is really excited about this. And they're made up of something called a nitrogenous base. And that's the piece where there's those 4 different types in DNA. Now, deoxyribo is literally like deoxyribose, ribose being a type of sugar. And when we look at deoxy, it literally means like you deoxygen, right? You took an oxygen away, basically. Deoxy. So when we see this sugar, we have an oxygen here, but not one here. Whereas if we were to look at ribose, or the RNA, ribonucleic acid, that actually would have an oxygen there. So it's slightly different in the sugar. Everything is cool when we're part of a team. Kirby snack break. Yay! Say thanks, Ribby. Ribby used some of his things for a Kirby snack. He's very appreciative. He still hasn't touched the cashews in his walking cage, but you know, we'll survive. Thanks, Ribby, for the Kirby snack. I feel like Sandra Googled it. I don't know. She was pretty quick on that. She may have known it. Oh, I can spell deoxyribonucleic correctly, but literally nothing else. So true. But hi, Kristen. How are you? So sugar, spice, and everything nice. Exactly. It's so true. You are made up of a lot of sugar. Oh man, he's ahead of the game. He totally is. He was ready for that. Science is the one thing I don't have to Google. I somehow understand it. Lies. Aw, Sandra, we're with you. I like that you like science. It's a good thing. So, that's a little bit about where the name comes from. It obviously has a lot of different things stemming from it. We're not going to get into more detail on that, but super cool to have that little difference. That's what the name kind of talks about. So it's made up of these building blocks. The 4 different nitrogenous bases, and hopefully you can see my mouse here. So these nitrogenous bases are slightly different depending on what they are. So you have 2 different types of those as well, but we have 4 possible bases in DNA. We have adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. I'll probably only refer to them as ACGT, ATGC, as we go forward instead of saying all their names. But there's 4 different types in DNA. If you're talking about RNA, instead of the thymine, you have something called uracil. What's really fun too is sometimes if you look at different ingredients or things that are being put into stuff, they sometimes have these bases in them. And uracil you've probably heard about a few times as well. So, very awesome. Teacher Sandra's line. Sandra's line. Time is in it. Time. It is. Look, you should just change your name to Christmas Thymine. So, there are 4 different bases, and these 4 bases in DNA literally change DNA's code. Everything about DNA's unique code and sequence comes from just these 4 bases and how they are arranged together and what order they are in. And you have, of course, millions of base pairs in your DNA, so we call these base pairs. And I'll explain what that talks about a little bit as more in a second. But you have millions of these nucleotides that make up your DNA molecule, and they can be in lots of different orders, and those particular orders come up with your DNA sequence. And that's what makes, you know, me and you very, very similar, and what makes us 96% similar to a banana is that sequence of these nucleotides. Everyone would be so confused at Christmas thymine. I would love it. Is there going to be a test on this later? I'm not prepared. I didn't take any notes. How could this happen? There's no test, but there are trivia questions for points. Don't worry. What I remember about AC, G, and T was we had to encrypt our name in AC, G, and T's based on a specific key, and then we had to decrypt someone else's. Yeah, I love those challenges. That would be that would have been a really fun one to try today. But I like doing like secret codes in A, T, C, and G as well. And that kind of thing. The problem is with some of it that's where some misconceptions can happen. Not like being that's a bad activity, because I love that activity, but not all, like if you're trying to represent, say, like a protein or something like that, it can change up a little bit about what you think is the code. I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's an awesome activity and it's a ton of fun. I'm sorry, wait a second. What shirt are you wearing right now? Is that Mr. DNA? Of course it is. It's Genetics Day. Of course I'm wearing Mr. DNA. Of course I am. Here, let me see if I can like pull it up a little bit more so you can see it a little bit more with the coat. But yeah, of course I plan to wear Mr. DNA today. I forgot we were going to do a little spin for Mr. B here. So let's spin for you. Okay, Mr. B. I'm going to start this spinning, and then you're going to need to type in there for me to stop, and as soon as I see your stop, I'm going to pull it. Okay? Because I'm just going to start spinning, and then I need you to type stop. If it lands on the yellow flower... Oh, not quite. Not quite. But thanks for spinning. We'll have more trivia questions as we go. Okay. And most of the trivia questions, other than that deoxyribo one, that was for fun. But most of the trivia questions are going to be based on what we talked about. So don't worry, you don't have to like research anything or know it off the top of your head. just be sort of listening, because I'll throw in some of those trivia questions. Death. Sorry, Mr. Pino died. No. Now I lose half my life points and sacrifice all my monsters instead of going back in time. This is lost on me. It's okay. It's going to be great. You're going to be fine. So, DNA made up of 4 different bases. The order of those bases make up a code. Now, those bases are strung together like a really, really lovely pearl necklace. Okay? And a DNA molecule, like a whole thing that you would pull out of your cell, is actually 2 of those strands together. And they make up what's called a double helix. So the name of the structure is called a double helix, and it kind of looks like a twisted ladder shape. So that is this thing here, and hopefully you can see that on your screen. But basically what you have is on the outside is a sugar phosphate backbone. So it goes sugar, phosphate, and connected to the sugar is those bases. So the A, T, C, G. And those bases hide on the inside of the DNA, and they connect together in very specific ways. So they don't just willy-nilly connect wherever. You have to have specific pairs between those bases. So your adenine and your thymine, those guys pair together, and your guanine and your cytosine pair together. So here's where we can see that. Again, I'm not going to go into super amounts of detail here. It's just for your information, and really, really cool that all of what makes us unique and awesome is down to like these bases. It's amazing. Okay? So we've got adenine and thymine. They're joined together by a special kind of bond. We won't talk about it today, but it's an amazing bond, and it's involved in a lot of things like water. It's called a hydrogen bond, but you don't need to know that. But it's cool. And so A and T always pair together, and C and G always pair together. So you have one strand of DNA, and then a strand of DNA that complements the other one. They pair up. So if you have one strand of the DNA, you are able to know what the other strand of the DNA is going to look like, because they pair up in a very specific way. That's pretty much all you need to know there. All right? I think I'm missing something here. I don't like pearls. Okay. Then beads. They are fun beads. Your favorite bead, sparkly and purple or something cool. I have to shoot off for a few moments. I gotta pick up Dustin from work. Okay, say hi to Dustin for us. Oh, and I missed something. Oh, that's me. This feels like Quiplash. That'd be fun. That would be fun. Just science themed Quiplash. The ABCDs. Yeah, ATCG. It is the science version of ACDC. Mine definitely connect willy-nilly, but sometimes willy-nilly have arguments, so they separate until they calm down. What? Bound together? Not with duct tape? Yes, your DNA is held together by duct tape. This is scientifically proven. It's not. Please don't quote me on that. That's in Southern people. The science version of ACDC. ATGC. Yeah, it's the new band. We only sing about science things. Glad I live north. Yeah, here we just connect planes and stuff with duct tape. ATGC. Exactly. It's the best band ever. I picked up the wrong controls to do what I needed to do. Okay, so they join together in a structure called a double helix. It is an amazing structure. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but you don't need to know the particular details. It's all okay. I just like talking about it. So we already talked about this. Like I said, remember how I said I threw all this information on a slide and you don't have to read it? It's because I already talked about it, because that's what happens when I get excited. But adenine always pairs with thymine. Cytosine always pairs with guanine. They're complementary bases, so one strand complements the other. So if you have one, you're going to know the other. I feel like we're as bad or worse than her students in class. 100% not. I love it. It's so much fun. So, what is its function? Well, what does it do? I mean, that's cool. It hangs out in your cell, and we're saying that it codes for how unique you are, but what does that actually mean? What does that actually mean? So what it means is we have those different bases, and they come up in a different sequence, right? There's a code to it. And that code is read by very specific proteins and mechanical structures. They're basically like little machines. That's why I'm calling them kind of mechanical. That are in your cells that read your DNA. Kind of like a book. And it has to translate it and then transcribe it and all that good stuff into transcribe and then translate opposite into proteins. Now, you've probably heard about protein. We talk about it in your meats and all that good stuff. And if you don't eat meat, we talk about how you get protein, because protein is really important for your body, obviously. But what we don't really talk about protein is pretty much what makes up your entire being. You are a lot of proteins. So protein isn't just like the protein you find in meat. That is 100% protein. But proteins are a lot of the structures, a lot of the molecules that do the work in your cell and why your cell functions like it is. So there's so many different types of proteins. We couldn't talk about all of them today. But there are specific proteins that read your DNA. There's specific proteins that work on replicating your DNA. There's proteins that work on, well, making your eye color a certain color or making your ears attached to the earlobes. Like, those are all protein-based things. And they pass signals throughout your cells, things like that. So proteins and DNA, like proteins and nucleic acids, are a huge piece of what makes us possible to be a living thing. They're amazing. We're worse because we're not required to know it. True. I don't like admin though. She's mean to me. Imagine if we were in a Discord call. Oh my gosh, it would be so much fun. But then I would actually have to get real serious and start actually talking, telling people to stop talking. Raises his hand eagerly. Yes. When do we get to the mitochondria? Oh, the powerhouse of the cell. We won't be talking about the mitochondria today. I wonder what game would be associated with a mitochondria. Maybe some sort of like athletic game, because you could talk about how certain cells have more mitochondria than others, because like your muscle cells need a lot of energy, so they actually have more mitochondria because that provides energy. That could be fun. They need a science game about cells. That's what they need, and then I could just do that whole thing. Can we make it blue instead of red? You didn't spin it, so we don't get it. Dang it, Leaves. It doesn't count, Sandra. You didn't do. What happened? What happened? Oh, I see. Did I ask a question? That's me. No midichlorians. You guys are cute. I love it. So no, we're not specifically talking about mitochondria today. However, if when we do get it to the end of sort of our main topic, when we start delving into some questions, if we want to look up some stuff about mitochondria, 100% happy to do that. Mitochondria are really, really interesting. Like mitochondria and chloroplasts are really, really cool, because the theory is, this is another tangent, but the theory is that mitochondria and chloroplasts were actually bacteria before, like, or protists, before they came to be a part of our cells. So technically, you have like a ton of little other ancient organisms that live within your own cells that have just coexisted for so long that they're now part of our cells. So mitochondria actually have their own DNA, which is really, really neat. And it's more focused on, it comes from more maternal lines because it was in the egg cell at basically when you became an egg cell mixed with a sperm cell, obviously. So you've got your mitochondria from your mom. So it's like a maternal lineage for your mitochondrial DNA. This was a huge tangent, but it's really, really cool. It's amazing. Leaves. I am here for the mitochondria only. Just kidding. Well, I gave you a lot of information about mitochondria that we didn't need for today, but I hope you enjoyed it. And mitochondrial diseases were actually really interesting to study as well. I don't remember a lot about them, but just the sort of randomness that comes with a lot of mitochondrial diseases really interests me. So it might be something to talk about in a future thing as well. Beer back. I appreciate it, of course. I looked for a game based on mitochondria and got a quiz that I think is supposed to be fun, but it's a quiz. Okay, Ribby. Yeah, I'm like, I don't think there's like a cell biology game, but I feel like now I should make one because it's too cool. So, back to what we're talking about in this particular instance on my tangent about mitochondria. Your proteins make up your structure, as well as your tissues, as well as their signaling proteins, as well as pretty much everything else that makes you who you are. So proteins are really, really important, and they are coded by your DNA. So your DNA is what tells your proteins that already exist to make more proteins, so that they can make more proteins, and so those proteins can do their job and then make more proteins. It's an amazing thing. So it's like, which came first, the proteins or the DNA? That's a really great question, and I think I've actually read about it before, so put a pin in that and we can look at that later. The reason I think it's supposed to be fun is because it makes noises when you click on things, even when you're wrong. It's essentially a self-licking ice cream cone, 100%. Yeah. There's a lot of feedback loops when it comes to proteins, which means like there's signals coming back and forth on whether or not more proteins are made, but it's like chicken and egg. Proteins, DNA. You need protein to make DNA, and you need DNA to make protein, so somehow they came into existence. It's pretty amazing. The proteins are going to take over the world. They already did. They did already. Don't look now. But there's proteins all around you. Falls through ceiling, I'm here. Welcome in, Mad. You are protein and sugar and water and nucleic acids. It's amazing. Ugh, blows my mind. I love science. I love it. I love it. You're protein. He's protein. She is protein. I'm protein. We are all protein. Except for the gym. See, exactly, right? We know the word of protein. But when you think about the fact that you are legitimately made of protein, that is where it gets to. And like proteins, oh, yes, we'll have to have this whole other thing. Maybe we should do a science one to do with like fitness and do like Ring Fit or something and talk about proteins, amino acids, the type of stuff that you use to like build muscle and stuff like that. I would love to do a stream on that because I'm also really interested in that kind of thing. Hi Boxy, how are you? Oh, I got you. Excellent. I'm in. Okay, amazing. It'll be a really good time. So I love it. I'm sorry I know this is the first episode of Science Around, so I'm all over the place. But it's because I'm really excited, and just starting this with you has like shown me that this is something I'm gonna really, really love. And so all my ideas are in my head and it's like all over the place. I can't stay on a straight line. There's clouds of ideas up there. So I apologize for being on tangents everywhere. I'm calm. Gym time. All right. So there we go. Now, your complete DNA sequence in the cells of your body, we call this your genome. So when I say the human genome, it means the entire sequence of DNA that makes up a human being. So there was something called the Human Genome Project. So once we had the technology to actually go in and specifically sequence each nucleotide, each base in your DNA, and remember there are millions of base pairs. And originally when people started reading that, you could read small chunks at a time, but it would take months, years. It was incredible. But once they had the technology to start looking into it in an actual viable thing and had a computer big enough to do it, because that's the biggest thing, is a computer big enough to do it in the time where we won't die before the study is done, they started what's called the Human Genome Project, which took 13 years to complete, but they were managed to sequence the entire human genome. Now, we don't understand everything about the whole human genome, but we now know the sequence of it, which is amazing. So we call that the genome, your entire sequence. So if I mention genome again, that's just kind of what that means. You are the human genome. I'm sorry for the human species. Human Genome Project, aka Clone Trooper Project. You never know. I didn't work on the project, so I don't know if there's top secret things happening. This is another one of those slides that has like a ton of information on it, and it's mostly just babbledy-gook, but I'll talk about it a little bit. So a huge piece of what we're going to talk about when it comes to inheritance is like cell replication and cell division, and particularly the process of what's called meiosis. We will not go into the entire process of meiosis today, but that is how any organism that is sexually reproducing uses meiosis to create like eggs and sperm cells. And that's going to be partially a piece when it comes to talking about flowers today, is our pollen and egg cells, which is what our flowers would have. And, you know, you don't really see that in Animal Crossing, but that is the idea of what would be behind the genetics of it. So, babbledy what? I don't know. I made up a word. But I'm also calm. I'm calmly mad. So wait, I'm confused. When you say map the genome, does that mean we know the exact combination it takes to be human instead of banana? Probably. I don't know if they've completely sequenced a banana. Probably by now they have. Someone out there really wanted to know what a banana is, I'm sure. Can you hold on to that question, or someone remind me of that question at the end? Because I think that would be really fun to research if they sequenced a banana. That'd be really, really cool. But calmly mad is terrifying. At least that's what people tell me when I'm calmly mad. I'm a human banana. Science got weird. That'd be so odd. I don't know what I would do with that. Also, after this, I kind of want to like assign a project of extracting DNA from fruit. I hope some of you got to do that in school. You can't like sequence the DNA, but you can see DNA and extract it from the cells of things like strawberries and bananas. So it's not something I would have done on stream because it would have been really messy, but it's really cool. So I'll give that experiment. I used to do it a lot with kids, and if you've never gotten to do it, I highly recommend trying it. It's science. You can do at home pretty much with anything you've got. I think you just need things like dish soap and obviously fruit. I'm trying to remember what else. I'd have to look it up. I can't remember the exact things you need, but you need stuff to like lice open the cells and things. How can we see it without microscope? Because it's like condensed, and so you can like pull it out and see like strings of. It's amazing. It's amazing. But you can't see it at the microscopic level, which would be really cool. But you all would need like an electron microscope, which is like not something someone would have at their house. This is witchcraft. It's amazing. It's science. So here's my really big slide of like random things. But as I was kind of saying, during cell division and cell replication and things like meiosis, mitosis, when you are creating cells, before you can replicate, you have to condense, or after you replicate your DNA, before you replicate your cell, you have to condense that DNA into tightly packed things called chromosomes, which you've probably heard before. Now, chromosomes specifically, different organisms have a different number of chromosomes. Kirby is very excited to talk about chromosomes. I am very excited to talk about chromosomes. For humans, we have what we call 23 pairs of chromosomes. What that means is we have chromosomes that are each individual, but they have sort of a like matching chromosomes. It's not quite matching because it can have a lot of different things on it, but the order of genes on that particular chromosome are in like the same spot. So the chromosomes are very similar, but they'll have a couple different things that we're going to talk about momentarily. But so we have pairs of chromosomes. So we have 23 pairs, and one of the pairs in humans is the sex chromosomes, also known as the X and Y chromosome. If you were genetic male, you would have an X and Y, genetic female, an X and an X chromosome. This is not unique to humans, but some animals have it very different. For example, birds have a very different set of sex chromosomes. They don't have the X and Y. So they have something a little bit different, which is really amazing as well. And it's a little bit different about whether or not the female has, a genetic female has 2 of the same chromosomes, or if the genetic male has 2 of the same chromosomes. That can change depending on the organism too. But specifically for humans, we have an X and Y chromosome that are possible. Flowers are all over the place. I think I might be missing a couple things. I'm going to scroll back up here to look. Hides electron microscope. They're huge. Like, it would be really hard to hide in your house. And they need, like, specific rooms and stuff. That is true, but I'm not an angry mad. I'm calmly mad. Mad is my alter ego. I'm simply mad. In this mad world, there's too much mad happening here. This is magic. Hides electron microscope. Well, that's confusing. I thought you were the mad professional. I'm a pear. Maybe. A really, really smart pair. They have ACDC chromosomes. Not ABCD chromosomes. Yeah. Yeah, it depends. It depends on what type of plant it is. But, yeah, they could be different. But I know birds are a little bit different, which is really cool. Okay, so that's a little bit about us. So we have 46 single chromosomes, but they're 23 pairs because they have similar things in a pair. Okay? Here's another slide with a bunch of different stuff, basically just to get some things out. Don't worry, you don't have to remember all of these things. We call a pair of chromosomes homologous chromosomes. And what that means is they have similar features, but they're not identical. And we'll talk about why as well. When I'm talking about genes, I'm not talking about the things you wear, okay? Not those cool things you wear that make you look cool. I'm talking about your genes that you have in your DNA. So genes are specific sections of DNA that code for specific things. Your DNA, of course, is inherited. You get it from your parents, okay? And these specific genes can also be inherited depending on what type you have. Homologous chromosomes, so the paired chromosomes that are very similar, they can carry the same, or they do carry the same gene type. So for example, say the gene for hair type will be at the same location on those paired chromosomes, those homologous chromosomes. However, each chromosome can have a different type of that gene, and we call that an allele. I'm going to talk about that more in a second. But for example, you may have one allele for curly hair and one allele for straight hair, but they are both a hair type gene. They're the same gene, but they have slight differences in those bases in the ATCG coding that make it so this one would code for proteins giving you curly hair, and this one would give you proteins straight hair. Now, this is an example. There is most likely multiple genes for hair type. I'm simplifying it down to a base amount here, but that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about alleles. So they're both the same gene. They're both the hair type gene, but they're different types of it, and those different types are called alleles. This is going to be really important when we're talking about the Animal Crossing flowers, which is why I'm trying to make sure we get a little bit more of what it is. Homologous. Tomato, tomato. Tomato, tomato? I'm only one pair? Oh my gosh. Literally every science teacher I have ever made that Gene Genes joke, it is the right of us to use that joke. Don't take it away from us. So it's like a parking spot for cars, but the kind of car that parks in it can be different. I like this. Yes, 100%. Exactly. So like this spot on your chromosome is for eye color. Again, I'm simplifying. There could be multiple genes, okay? But let's say there's one gene for eye color. And in that particular spot, you may have a blue allele, you might have a green allele. And you have two chromosomes that have that same gene spot. You have the two chromosomes that have a spot for that eye color allele, but you could have two different types of alleles. And we'll talk about which one you're going to end up with showing and which eye color you might have in a second when we talk about how that works. Sandra, she's just making up words now. I know we're making jokes about it, but genes are so freaking interesting and cool. My absolute favorite part of bio. I agree. The car parking scenario sounds like an inappropriate euphemism. All right. So hopefully that's clicking a little bit. Don't worry if it's not yet. I have a little bit more on this in the next thing. All right. The wheel spin. Another wheel spin with a trivia question. So remember, I'm going to pull a trivia question from what we've just kind of looked at and see if we can get it. Okay. First person. Are you ready? Trivia question. First person who can tell me all 4 of the nitrogenous bases. You have to tell me their full name. First person. We'll spin the wheel. do, 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 do. I should have like a game song. Like a game theme song to go with this. Do, 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 do. Adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, so close. Sandra won that one, but Mr. B was pretty close behind. All right, Sandra, we're going to spin the wheel for you. I really want to, like, okay, are you ready? You're going to put stop in there. I don't know how to spell cytosine. You got it. That is how you spell cytosine. You had it. You did it right. Congratulations. All right. Oh, what I was going to do is, if you got the question right, I was going to give you 100 treats anyway. So, Mr. B, I will still award you with 100 treats. Which gets you a Kirby snack if you would like to send a snack to Kirby. And then if you get the wheel landing on the gold flower, then you gain another 500 treats. I was going to reward you still for getting the answer correct. So I'll give you 100 points for Mr. B at the first one, Sandra for getting this one right, and then I don't want to die. I know it's a skull. I don't have any, I can't customize it. All right, I'm going to start it spinning. Sandra, let me know when to stop. Oh, that's so close. So close. One day. We'll do some bonus spins later. So that was really close. Sorry, Sandra, you die. We're just losing viewers left and right here as everybody dies off from the spinning wheel of death. All right. So, quick break to talk about some scientists. Oh, actually, let's do one more trivia question before I speak about Rosalind Franklin, who hopefully you guys know about. If you don't, we're going to learn about her in a second. So one more trivia question. Who were the 2 people who discovered the structure of DNA that you probably learned about, if anybody knows. I'll take last names if you don't know their first names. Watson and Crick. Mr. B's on it. Knew exactly the question I was going to ask. All right, Mr. B. I hate waiting for deliveries taking so long. I'm hungry. Dustin, thank you so much for that host. I appreciate that. Thank you. And Ruby, I totally know. All right, Mr. B. Start this spinning. Okay, I'm positioned. So that's 200 points for Mr. B. Ha! Ha! Oh, that was so close too. A little bit longer. Sorry, I'm late to class. That's okay, Dustin. We're just getting into it. Mr. B's cheating. I know, he like knew. He knew. He was ready for that question. He's like, it's gonna be about Watson and Crick. I just know it. I just know it. I'm back. Here's my hall pass. Thank you. Thank you. You can hang it up. Mr. B, you died again. So rude. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit to do with DNA and its sort of discovery. So growing up, particularly when I was in high school learning about DNA, we only learned about Watson and Crick. So Watson and Crick are considered the founding fathers behind the structure of DNA. However, there is also a third person who I know now is in the curriculum a lot more, and I always teach about her as well, but I hope that you folks also heard about her. But Watson and Crick discovered the structure of DNA, and they were the ones who widely published it and were able to get the credit for it. Watson and Crick also continued to do much of the amount of genetic studies for the next few years, and I believe it was Watson, but I could be wrong, who actually also started the human, or was a big part of the Human Genome Project when it came to fruition. But Watson and Crick themselves, of course, back when they discovered the structure of DNA, it was still very rare for women to be in science, and if they were in science, it was very rare for them to get the appreciation and the recognition for what they were working on or what they were studying. Rosalind Franklin is one of those people. She worked in a lab alongside where Watson and Crick were working on the structure of DNA, and she worked in something called X-ray crystallography. We won't talk too much about what that is, but basically you shoot X-rays through crystals of substances and try to see if you can determine what the shape is. I do not study X-ray crystallography, so I cannot interpret it properly, but you can see a picture up there beside Rosalind Franklin. I guess I could have just used my mouse, but you know, it's fine. Of Rosalind Franklin's X-ray crystallography image of DNA. Watson and Crick were working on this for a very long time, and they could not figure out the actual structure of DNA until they saw this image from Rosalind Franklin. So she imaged DNA using X-ray crystallography, and whether or not she knew about it, I think she probably would. She was a very smart lady. However, we only really hear Watson and Crick's side of things, where they say she didn't understand what she was looking at. But we don't know. I didn't know Rosalind Franklin. She actually passed away. She was fairly young when she passed away. And what was really unfortunate is, of course, Watson and Crick won the Nobel Prize for finding the structure of DNA. Rosalind Franklin was a really big piece of them figuring out the double helix structure, that twisted ladder, and unfortunately never won a Nobel Prize for it, and wasn't really recognized for her contributions until after she died. So let's continue that on. If you ever talk about DNA or teach DNA to kids or hear people talking about DNA, because you know that's a really big topic at parties, bring up Rosalind Franklin. Woman in science, was not recognized, but now she will be recognized, hopefully forever, as being a really big piece of discovering the structure of DNA. So there's a little bit of a scientist profile for you. Let's see. I watch a lot of game shows. Totally. Here's some stuff to catch up on. Mr. B has died twice. Sandra's died once. Yay, historical bigotry. 100%. We're beating it, but the reason I'm showcasing women in science today is because we have not beat it yet. There is still a lack of women in science. It is still harder for women to be recognized for what they do. So don't forget Rosalind Franklin, huge piece of DNA history. Miss Magma, butterflies telling on me. Miss Magma Kitty, Kristen's talking in class. Hi, 1982, I believe, she passed away. Yes, so she passed away in 1982, and she really hasn't been talked about in curriculum until very recently. Like I said, I didn't learn about Rosalind Franklin when I learned about DNA in school. It wasn't until I got into university when one of my professors spoke about Rosalind Franklin and put this in my head to speak about Rosalind Franklin. So I hope that it will continue on that way. And like I said, share it if you're in an educator position. Please share it. I remember reading about her in bio. I don't think I've ever heard of her. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing lady. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, teacher had to pee. Where's her hall pass? Ay, ay, ay. That's it. Magma spin the wheel of death to answer for his crimes. Wheel of death. Wheel of death. Oh, man. Oh, man. Grabs a note from Dustin and checks, yes, she will be his girlfriend, and passes. Will you go out with me? Circle yes or no. Very well, I accept this challenge. We need a wheel of death? Okay, we're gonna take a pause to make Mad spin the wheel of death. What happens if he wins, though? Alright, Mad, tell me when. Say stop. Circles or. Cake or death? Death. That's a lot. You were almost right on the skull. He doesn't die if he wins. Poor Mad. Yeah, that was that's a hard one. You weren't even close to the yellow. Whew. Whew. Alright. Rosalind Franklin. Share about it. Know about it. You've learned a fact. If anything else, you learned about Rosalind Franklin today. Alright. Now. I don't know why I put these weird taglines on here. I feel like I'm trying to sell you guys something. But I'm not, I promise. Falls through a trapdoor in the floor. Alright. Inheritance. So we've talked a bit about DNA and its structure, some basics to remember by. Now let's talk about how we can look at how it gets passed on. Like I said, we're not going to get into a lot of cell division. We're not really going to talk about meiosis, which is a big piece of inheritance. And we're not going to talk about reproduction. Sorry. But we're going to talk a little bit about inheritance with what it has to do with our Animal Crossing today. So talking about some general stuff to get us started about inheritance and how it works, okay? Why would a classroom need trapdoors of death is beyond me, but it's in the school funding. Yeah, the trapdoors get funded more than, like, the science labs and, like, the musical theater program. Shut up and take my money. Oh, I want to talk about reproduction. No one told me about the birds and the bees. Yeah, I feel like I'd be banned for that if I got too into that, even though technically it's science. Technically. I always remember this one time I was subbing for a class, and they, of course, it was the day they were going to learn about sexual reproduction in the class, and I had never met this class before. Perfect. What a great way to meet a class as a substitute, is to teach them sexual reproduction. So I have to go in, and I had to print out some of the slides for some of the students who needed a slide to go along with it, and there was a picture of chickens as an example of sexual reproduction. Which, like, I'm a scientist. It doesn't bother me. I don't giggle at it. It's my job. It's science. But the secretary who printed it for me, she was so embarrassed. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Frost! Thank you so much for your resub. Thank you so much. Maybe I should just wear this for the rest of stream today. Just be like Dr. Dino. I think it might be really cool. Look at Kirby. Kirby thought I was dancing for cashews. Thank you for that resub, Frost. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Where are we at here? Go through Frost Girl some love. Yes, please. Let's get him back streaming, everybody. Ooh. 11 months. That's incredible, because that actually probably means I am. Everything is cool when we're part of a team. Everything is something when we're living on a dream. Say thanks, Dustin. He says thank you. He appreciates this gift, this donation of a Kirby snack. Frost, thanks for that. I hope work is going well. And where are we at here? I missed some things. Mine was worse. I had to sub in the CNA class, and me and this other math teacher were told to do it together, and they were talking about the female reproductive system. Yeah, 100%. And I still giggle when I hear that word. Yeah, I probably, like, shouldn't say it on stream. But I appreciate it. And totally. It's so hard, because it's science, right? You just, like, have to do your best. My favorite thing, though, is to say it with an extremely straight face, and when kids try to make jokes about it, and then you just say it back to them with extremely straight face, you can be like, yes, thank you so much, Billy. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And then Billy's all like, thought he was making a real funny joke about, you know, like, anatomical situations, and you're like, yes, exactly, Billy. Exactly. Thank you for being such a scientist today. My favorites. My favorites. Yeah, welcome to the sexual reproduction part of class. Quick hello from work. I hope it's going well, Dr. Dino. Automat stole my message. 10 out of 10. Destroy Automat. I know, almost a year. That's what I was going to say. It must mean that I am 1 month away from my, like, affiliate anniversary. That's really nice. That's really nice. Okay, he's coming in here and he's gambling. He's back to 0. All right, Billy sounds like a brat. Just kidding. Darn it, Billy. Of course Billy's a brat. But he might be a future scientist one day. We don't know. Wow, she read the Automod message and didn't release it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so we're not going to get into a ton of details about that, but it's a good time. Even though it's like really funny to go in as a sub and teach it, I have a lot of fun with it. You just embarrass them right back. It's great. It's a good time. Okay, so inheritance. Let's chat about that. So we've got a couple different fancy folk up here who, if you play Animal Crossing, you probably know them. Raymond is a newer character brought into Animal Crossing. I think in New Horizons, people are like selling him for like hundreds of dollars. It's incredible. It's a little out there, but there we go. And there's also Bob, who I've seen in a lot of different places as well. I think Bob is really popular Animal Crossing villager too. So I'm throwing them out there. It's like, okay, great. So we have these two individuals. We know that DNA is what makes them unique, and the code of the DNA is what makes them unique. But where do they get it? How do we end up with Bob looking so different from Raymond? Now, some of those pieces, of course. I'm getting a little impatient now. It's been an hour. Oh, for your food? Oh, no. Of course, some of those do come from things like mutations. We're not talking about that today. That will 100% be another Science Around stream because mutations are cool, but also sometimes bad, but usually really cool. But mutations are a piece of why we're so unique and, of course, why we're different than a banana. But what we're going to talk about here is how, of course, Bob inherited different DNA than what Raymond did. So they're getting DNA from, of course, 2 different places. So they're going to be different, of course. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. She's gone English. This is how you know she's smart and knows things. What are you talking about? She's gone Jarvis. I don't even know where I did it, so it's so automatic. But how do we get unique DNA? How do we get a Bob versus a Raymond? How does that happen? Also, how do we get 2 different colored eyes? Maybe we'll talk about that later, because that's really cool too, how you get that chimeric effect. That's also DNA and genetics. But I love how this says click to add title because I meant to do this as presentation mode, but I'm not. I just have it on a screen, so please ignore that title. But DNA is, of course, inherited. That's what makes it such an important molecule, is that it can actually be passed down through generations. I'll ask Eva how she got her 2 colored eyes. Beer back. Okay, let me know what she says. You gain some from each of your parents. Okay, sometimes this can be predicted. But it's very, very complicated, and even though we break it down as simply as we can, the more you get into genetics and the more you get into looking at cell biology and reproduction and all that stuff, the more unpredictable it gets. It's amazing, but very hard to predict. But there are certain things that we can do, and as long as nothing else funky goes on, we can sort of predict what offspring will look like from what we know about the parents. Chimera always sounds like a cool word, like aliens and stuff. I know, right? What kind of pizza you get? Yeah. She said she was born with it, then maybe something about Maybelline. I like it. Ham, salami, and pepperoni. Yum. Yesterday I had barbecue chicken. It was so good. Okay. So we can track certain genes and how they may be inherited. I talked about the Human Genome Project earlier, so I already spoke about this. I added it in earlier because I don't even follow my own order of script, of course, because that's how I roll. But the Human Genome Project sequenced the entire human genome. So we know many of the genes that are in the human genome, that are in our genetics. We don't necessarily know all of them. That's one of those things of science. I don't know if we can say we're at 100%. I don't think we are. But we also know where most of these genes are located on the different chromosomes because we know the sequence of them. We spoke about this earlier. Remember, I was going to come back to it. For each gene, we have 2 copies, one on each paired chromosome. So those homologous chromosomes each have that particular gene, but they may be slightly different. They may be different alleles, but they're still the same gene. So remember, I was saying we were going to come back to that. Okay. Can twins be born 15 years apart? No. That's more like cloning, or if you like somehow have like cryogenics set up where you could, I guess like you could like, I don't think people freeze embryos though. I don't think that's a thing people do. I don't think it's like okay to do that. But yeah. Like maybe if that were a thing, but not so much. Not so much. So you even have to share with the rest of class. This food talk is making me super hungry. I think yes if one egg is frozen. Because what twins are is that a movie thing? It might be a movie thing. Yeah. So science baby is the only explanation. Got it. I don't know. Listen to me. I'm a business. Yeah. I don't want to like be quoted on this because I don't know enough about like that like reproductive technologies, but which are amazing in themselves. But the like twins themselves, it depends on what kind of like twins, if they are identical twins or whatever the other one is called. So one is just where it happens to be that you had 2 eggs at the same time, and so both were fertilized, and so they're 2 separate individuals, and they DNA wise, like genetic wise, are unique. They don't look like each other. They just happen to be in the same place at the same time and are born at around the same time. But I don't, but that is when they're fertilized. It's not necessarily eggs. So it has to be when they're actually fertilized. So when they're the combination of mom and dad. So I don't think that they freeze embryos, but I could be wrong. It just feels like one of those ethics things that might not be a thing right now. Fraternal twins. Thank you, Mr. B. I'm like, identical versus whatever the other one is called. Identical twins. Ooh, at 87 days. But was that... We're going to have to see what the sources are on that one and take a look at that. Oh, I read years. I'm dumb. That's what Google said on a quick search. I didn't look into it. Okay. Yeah, I'd have to research a little bit more before I like totally quoted it. And whether or not that was something to do with the way that they were, like, I keep saying fertilized, which seems like a really weird word to use, but like that's what I'm going to use. And like the development of them. It could be something more to do with that than necessarily, and they were probably fraternal twins. But yeah, and identical twins, that would be, it's actually, you start off as like a cell that has been, you know, it has the egg cell and the sperm cell, and you start off as one cell, but as it duplicates, at some point, it actually splits into 2 separate zygotes, basically, which aren't even quite embryos yet. And then those develop into embryos, develop into babies. And so that's why they're so genetically similar, is they usually come from like 1 or 2 cells, so they have pretty much everything is like exactly the same. It's amazing. So they're like the same thing. They're clones. It's cool. But that's identical twins. So like that, I really couldn't see being like they could be born years apart unless we throw away ethics and like take one of the twins out. I just think that would be really dangerous, and I don't think it's something they would do. Unless they did it artificially, which again, ethics-wise, I don't think happens. I don't think they're working on like purposely making twins, because that's kind of like cloning, and I feel like that's just like not a thing. But wow, that's a great question. My brain is like trying to think through that. Sad man. I'm gonna sit in my corner. What? Oh. I think in that case, like I posted one twin was born prematurely. I've never had identical twins in class before, and I would be afraid to because I know I'd slip it up, like not knowing who they were. Yeah, it's fun. It's a good time. I definitely had twins in one of my classes during my teaching practicum, and I don't think I knew who they were ever. I think I pretty much went through the whole practicum and like always just referred to them together. And they were very like similar people. Like they were both in the same sports. They both like hung out in the same friend group. So, and they would always sit together in class. Now, the only thing I think that saved me was putting them in a seating arrangement, which sometimes as a substitute doesn't work anyway because the students are going to sit wherever. But when it was like my classroom as a practicum, they were in a specific seating order because of the teacher I was in, who was my mentor, had them in a specific order already. And so I kept that. And I think that's the only way I was able to tell who was who, is because of where they were sitting. But if they had switched up one of the days, I probably wouldn't have known, because they were very similar people and like very similar like hair and clothes and friends, and yeah, nope. Very Shining movie vibe, you know? Yeah, that's true. Come play with us. My sisters are identical and they looked exactly the same until about 12 or 13. It drove my mom mad. That'd be really hard as a parent. It'd be really hard. I love it. I love this conversation. Thank you for the question earlier. I think it was Mad earlier, but thank you for that question about it. Like I said, I think it's possible. I just don't think it's ethical, so I don't think it's done. But I could be wrong. Okay, so we talked about the Human Genome Project. We talked about that genes are located in a certain spot, and we talked about people having different alleles for the same gene. So you can have different alleles that code for a different protein, like a slightly different protein that makes green eyes or blue eyes, but they're the same eye color gene. Okay? Yes, I can be smarticle with questions and stuff. Yeah, it was a great question. All right. So, please ignore the click to add text. Let's just get that out of the way. Let's be professional. Oh my gosh. The worst. Like I said, it's not in presentation mode, because when it's in presentation mode, it gets rid of those things. Shh. Also, please observe the flowery Google Slides theme that I did today to correspond with Animal Crossing. Click it. Add text. No. But I just wanted to show you super quickly and remind you that DNA, of course, replicates. So when it does replicate, you end up with your double strands again. So before something reproduces, it has to make specific types of cells for reproduction. In humans, it's eggs and sperm cells. In things like flower, it's pollen. It's still kind of the same type of thing, but there you go. So they each have to be made, and what we call those is germline cells. So that was really nerdy of me to push my glasses back up on my face, but it was great. But we call those germline cells. And so those are specific types of cells that have been formed through meiosis. And meiosis breaks up some of your chromosomes into different places. And so not every germline cell has the same DNA as the one next to it, because it might actually have a different chromosome than the other one. So there's also randomness there of which one you get, because each of them is slightly different than the others. Nerds are birds are cool, so you are cool. Yes. No, it's meiosis. Meiosis. I love the band Oasis. So yeah, DNA has to be replicated, and then specifically when you get into cell division and meiosis, you end up with a slightly different set of germline cells that have different DNA from the germline cells next to them. So different combinations of stuff. So for example, let's say we have Bob. There's Bob. Bob is a happy purple cat. Now, obviously, we don't really see a lot of natural purple cats in our lives, but in Animal Crossing, they appear to be a thing. Can't tell you if their fur color is based on one gene or not, because we don't really know who Bob's parents are. We're never introduced to them. I'm sure they talk about them. We like Bob as a cat. We like Bob. But let's say Bob has parents. Okay? And he wasn't just like created in a game. He has a couple parents that made Bob. Let's say parent number 1 is a nice looking gray cat. Look at those eyes. Parent number 2, I promise, I looked up trying to find a purple cat image. This is all I could get. I'm sure I could find a better one, but I just didn't feel like, oh, hail Bob. Bob has parents. The parental Bob figures. Life ruined. They go on to fight Bob. Looks like they'd steal my cheese or something. So Bob has one parent who's gray and one parent who's purple. Okay? Each of these parents, we're just going to break it down to looking at a fur color. All right? So we've got a gray parent and we have a purple parent. So each of these parents, we're going to give them something real simple here. They have the fur gene. Both of them have a fur gene, but one of them has purple allele and one of them has a gray allele. Bob inherits both of them. He gets a chromosome from one parent and a chromosome from the second parent, and they're different and have different things on them. And he probably inherits maybe both, like 2 purple alleles. Like maybe this gray actually does have a purple allele. We don't know yet. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Or he ended up in getting a gray allele and a purple allele, but the purple allele is stronger. I'm putting that in quotation marks because we're going to talk about what that means in a second. So he's gained 2 different chromosomes from the parents. They both have a fur gene on them, but they are slightly different alleles. And Bob ends up purple. Okay. So, how do you know who you look like? Sometimes we don't know, but sometimes we know some patterns. We call them inheritance patterns. So genes have different kinds of the same pattern called alleles. I wrote that kind of funny, but we talked about alleles already. For example, fur color is the gene, but purple fur or gray fur are alleles of the fur color gene. And alleles have what's called a certain dominance pattern or inheritance pattern. If an allele is a dominant allele, so let's say purple fur is a dominant allele. That means if you have even just one purple allele, doesn't matter what your second allele is that you got from parent 1 or parent 2, you got one purple allele. If it is the dominant allele, you will be purple. No questions asked. Even if your other allele is a gray fur, the purple is the dominant allele. The gray fur is what we called recessive. It's more recessive to the purple. So you end up being purple no matter what. Even if you have an allele of purple and an allele of gray, because the purple is dominant, you're going to be purple like Bob. Hopefully that makes sense. We're going to demonstrate a little bit more of that with another picture of kind of the same thing. I duplicated it. Don't at me. Miss Magma, can I go to the bathroom? Yes, Mad. Please go to the bathroom and catch up with a friend when you get back. Kirby is very excited about purple alleles. Okay. So, let's say that parent 1 in their fur genes has 2 gray fur alleles. We're going to keep it real simple. So 2 gray fur alleles. The gray fur allele is what we call recessive. Recessive. New word, new definition. Parent 2, our mysterious purple parent, has 2 of the purple fur alleles. Purple fur is dominant over gray fur. Bob gains a gray fur allele from parent 1 and a purple fur allele from parent 2. Because purple fur is the dominant allele to the more recessive gray allele, Bob has purple fur. Saying it again in the same way, but with a picture now. That's how I teach. Alright, now, that's cool and all. What does this have to do with Animal Crossing other than Magma putting in cool pictures of Bob? We're going to keep going. So, now we're talking a little bit about inheritance patterns. It can get more complicated than this, but for what our purposes are today, we only need to worry about dominant and recessive, okay? So we can label these alleles when we're using them or talking about them using letters to make it a bit easier. So instead of always having to write purple fur, gray fur, we can give them letters to represent that. If it's on the same gene, we're going to give it the same letter, but we're going to give the dominant allele a capital letter, and the recessive allele gets a lowercase letter. Level. Letter. So for example, whoa, that's me. Is it you? I think that's Rover, right? So for example, purple fur, we give a capital P. Gray fur, we give a little p. Purple fur is dominant, gray fur is recessive. Purple fur gets the capital P because it's dominant, gray fur gets the little p because it's recessive. Okay? This is important because we're going to talk about it more when we get into why we're talking about Animal Crossing. Alright. Oops. Now, how do we predict? Purple fur, loud curb squawk. Gray fur, no burb squawk. Exactly. Got it. Fantastic. Alright. So, there is a tool we can use for actually predicting this, and we can thank Gregor Mendel the monk for the use of what's called the Punnett square. I put Leopold here. He's going to represent Mendel for us today, just because he's snooty. I had him on my island, and until, actually he's still there today, but he's moving out. But he had like a classroom in his house, so I figured he was like smart enough we could use him to represent Gregor Mendel. But yes, if you've heard of Gregor Mendel before, he was a monk who crossed pea plants together. So pea plants have like very specific genetics that you can actually look at with your crosses. So he was using pea plants and he was crossing them together to observe what kind of inheritance patterns came out of different traits. So things like flower color, pea pod color, and pea pod shape, things like that. So he could measure those, and he came up with some very good rules for how things are inherited in a simple way. It gets complicated, but for today, we only need to worry so much about kind of the simple pieces, which is really nice. Spent a long time studying pea pods. Yeah, spent a long time studying pea pods. Is anyone grabbing it? The law of dominance, the law of segregation, and the law of independent assortment. Woo! Yay! Sandra knows her stuff. Another quick science profile before we head on into our next section and talk a little bit about Punnett squares. Actually, was I going to do Punnett squares? I think I was going to show you, before we get into the science profile, I think I was going to show you how to do a Punnett square before I move on. Now, can we see this? Kind of. I kind of want it like there. And we'll zoom in a little bit. So, some of you have heard of Punnett squares already. Some of you probably heard about them, but have forgotten and hidden away in your life a long, long time ago. Listen, when I tell y'all like bio, I love Punnett squares. Yeah, Punnett squares are an amazing tool. So I'm going to start with a really simple one, just of our purple fur we were talking about. Now, I forgot to hook up my drawing pad, so this is going to get real interesting. But if you remember, I said, okay, oh man, this is going to be bad. But we got a capital P. That is purple fur allele. Oh man, I really wish I hooked up that drawing pad. I'm really sorry. But when I hook up my capture card for my Switch, it messes up all of my USB items. I don't know why. My computer hates it. But I didn't want to unplug anything and plug the pad back in after I got the capture card working, so that's why it's not on today. So I'm going to do my best to draw this with my mouse. I apologize. Can't see the lettering, by the way? Dang it. Hold on. Where's my grab a button? There we go. There you go. That seems okay, right? That seems okay. So yeah, I apologize for this. Maybe I'll use a marker instead. That might be better. It goes off screen. There you go. Thank you. So we're going to use capital P. This is going to be a little hard, so I'm going to make like a... Why is that gray? Maybe I don't like the marker. Use a pen. I'm going to use like a little kind of like weird fancy little P, little curl on it, just so you know that that's lowercase. And this is going to be our gray for allele. Now, it's just represented by a letter. Sometimes you could choose any letter. It is totally arbitrary. So if I wanted to do an F for fur color or something, I could do F. Like, it's really not that big of a deal. I just did P because we were talking about purple, and it's the dominant one, so we went with a capital P. But you could really put any letter you want. Okay, so remember we said the gray parent has... Gotta make this a little curvy. 2 alleles that are both the gray fur alleles. So they're both the little p alleles to make the cat gray. Okay? The purple parent had 2 purple alleles. So we're going to write down just here 2 capital P's to represent that they have 2 of the dominant purple alleles. A Punnett square is called a Punnett square because it actually looks like a square. Sometimes in science, we actually name it for what it is. Okay? So we're going to do a little square here. We're doing what's called a monohybrid cross, meaning that it's only one gene we're looking at. Here comes the noms. Yes, Ribby. I'm excited for your food for you. So we're only looking at one gene. When we get to the flowers today, we're going to be looking at 3. We're not going to look at 4, but there is a flower that uses 4. So just so you know, this is one gene. Monohybrid cross is what this is called. So monohybrid cross, we're going to label the top with our possible alleles. So you could possibly get a little p from this one, or this little p if you're the offspring, if you're Bob. Or you could also get a capital P from this parent and a capital P from this parent. So no matter what, you need to get one from this parent and one from this parent. In this case, it doesn't matter. You're always going to get a little p from this parent and a big P from this parent. But what you do is you go through and you combine what we see. We have a capital P, we get a little p. Bring it over, we have a capital P and another little p. So this, oh, I made that a little p, so let's erase that. Please ignore. There we go. So this one's a particularly simple Punnett square, but it's just to represent what we're doing. Then we have, again, capital P, little p, capital P, little p. So in this case, there is no option. No matter what, you will have a dominant purple allele, the capital P, and a little p for the recessive gray allele of the fur color. So there is a 100% chance that the offspring of these two parents will look like Bob and be purple. Where's my Bob? Bob! So no matter what, if Bob has these two parents, there was no other option. Their offspring was always going to be purple because the purple was the dominant allele. So the big P is always dominant over the little p, so no matter what, these are your offspring combinations that are possible. There's only one possible combination. It is purple fur. Okay. It's the same for algebra. Instead of if you're multiplying x plus 3 times x plus 4, you put an x and 3 on the top and x and 4 on the side and multiply it the same way. Oh, okay. Maybe I have seen that method then. I don't know if I've ever used it, but I might have seen it then. That's awesome. Okay. Let's make it a little bit more complicated. Let's say that parent 2, the purple parent, actually is kind of like Bob, where it's a capital P and a little p. So let's try this again. Let's erase what I've got here. Doesn't really show you. I'm sorry. I'm using this whiteboard thing, which is really fun, but it's not like the easiest. Oh, I erased the cat's face. Oh my gosh, please ignore. I'm sorry, cat. I'm so sorry. Okay. Let's do this again. All right. So we have a Punnett square. Now, parent Kirby, what's the matter? I think it's getting late and Kirby's like, I want to go to bed. It's too bad. We're talking about science. You have to stay awake. Okay, so parent 1 is our gray parent. Now, we've said that he has 2 little p alleles. So he's got 2 of the gray alleles, and that's the only reason he's gray. Because to actually be gray, you have to have 2 of the recessive alleles. Because as soon as you throw a purple in there, you're purple. So we need to have those 2. Beat me to my question about what happens if Bob had an offspring. Yeah, exactly. So let's say... Now, pretend these are not the same parents, but let's say this is now someone like Bob, right? So Bob has a big P and a little p. Now, what we say is his purple is his phenotype, meaning that's what he appears to be, is purple. That's what is actually done, is that purple protein is being made and he's ending up being purple, okay? Now, if we say had Bob and Bob finds a nice lady that was very similar to one of his parents and has 2 gray alleles to be a gray cat, how does that look? Same idea. We're going to put our capital P, our little p, our 2 little p's, and we're going to combine it just the same, but there's going to be some different options for our offspring. So before, we could only get purple offspring. There was no other options. Ooh, science! Laura, hey! Welcome in! Oh yeah, we're going to go visit Laura. Laura, how's your class going? This is taking a lot longer than I thought it would, Laura, which is a good thing, but I haven't even thought about coming on a field trip yet, so I hope you're still around. It's 12 a.m. here, so I'm excited enough about science to still can you hear it? Mr. B, I appreciate it so much. Okay, so let's cross these guys. Laura did... Yes! Okay, it's done. Laura, you can hang out and help me out. Laura and I actually did our science degree together, so I'm excited for her to be here because this is fun. So, capital P, purple, little p. We're going to combine these together. Now, if we're remembering back from that last one, if you have a big P, no matter what, you're going to be purple. It doesn't even matter what that second allele is. So this one's going to be the same. We're taking I'm sorry, let's do a little P here. We'll do a big P on the side, even though that's not how you write it at all. But I don't feel like getting out the eraser. I'm really lazy. So both of these have a big P and a little P. No matter what, as long as they've got the big P, they're purple. Kirby is real mad. Then we have this one. Now this is a little P. This is a gray allele, right? By just looking at the purple cat, you can't actually tell if he has a gray allele or not. So we don't know. Until maybe we end up with offspring that are not purple. Because if he had two big P's, all of his offspring would be purple. Or all of her offspring would be purple. So let's take a look. If we have little p, that combines with another little p. Okay. This little p combines with this p. So what actually ends up happening is there is a 50% chance. Again, I'm really sorry I don't have a pen. And instead of using my mouse. There's a 50% chance that Bob's going to have offspring that look kind of like Bob, that are going to have purple fur. Okay? But there's also a 50% chance that they're not going to look like Bob. Maybe they look more like Raymond, or they're gray. Now, if these offspring, if the ones that look like Bob go on to have offspring, again, they're still carrying that gray fur allele. So it's still possible for them to have gray offspring, even though they themselves are purple. However, this gray, if your offspring ends up being gray, it must mean that they have two of the little P's, or two of the gray alleles, so they will only ever be able to have, or give, the gray allele. Doesn't mean that they won't always have purple offspring, because if they go and have offspring with a purple cat, they'll probably have purple offspring. There's probably a chance. But they themselves cannot give away a purple allele, because they don't have it. They only have gray. So if two grays in this situation, again, very much simplifying it, but if two gray cats were to have offspring, because they both would have to have that recessive gray allele, they would only have gray babies. Because there's no way for them to have a purple. They don't have a purple allele. Cool stuff. I worried I had missed you. No, I'm still going. I started late because my friend was here for a while. I went to get food after my bathroom trip and I could hear Kirby in my kitchen. He's so loud. So loud. I might distract him. How can I distract him? We're gonna have to distract him with cashews. There's just no other way. I don't like doing that because it like tells him he can like scream at me for a cashew, but we've got serious business to attend to. No, you can't drop that one. Okay, I'm gonna put this here. You can come back for it later. That'll distract him for a little bit. He's got an extra one he's gotta come back for. Hi, Nightbot. Hey there. Yeah, usually I don't like giving him cashews because it kind of rewards him for screaming at me, but he's kind of interrupting. So we'll distract him for a little bit. Poor guy. Alright. So, this is Punnett Squares. Now, like I said, it gets more complicated. We're going to get a little bit more complicated with it today because I think you're ready. I believe in you. I think you can understand it. But that's how you do it. You build a nice box, you match up your letters, you're good to go. But this is what's called a monohybrid, so there's only one gene we're looking at. The flowers have more genes. So, we're going to look at those. In the curriculum now, people in like high school don't actually really, like here in BC, they don't actually look at more than a monohybrid anymore. Sometimes people might introduce them to dihybrids, but no further than that. Because it gets really complicated and you start just being like, why draw it out by hand? Like this is something we could probably calculate. But yeah, it gets a little bit more complicated. So let's take a look. So remember we have Gregor Mendel. He's the cool monk that helped us out with that one. Here is this scientist I didn't know about. So this is the other two scientists that I'm going to talk a little bit about today. We're just going to look at an article about them and see a little bit about what they did. I was just looking up geneticists and women in science and genetics just to see if I could find some people who were doing things to do with genetics today and modern science so we could have someone we could look at. So this is Janet Thornton, who I haven't heard of before, but I did copy links. We can take a look at this one. So this is from yourgenes.com. Now you can't, hopefully you can see, yeah, you can see the article, which is fantastic. I'm going to look at this page so I can see it. For a brief second, I forgot you had a bird, and when I saw Kirby in the background, it scared the heck out of me. I think we did as many as 2 in high school. Yeah, I remember doing dihybrids in high school, but we don't teach it so much now. And I don't know if they take it a little bit further maybe in the grade 12 biology, if you take grade 12 biology, but the general science that students have to take until grade 10, they only learn about monohybrids now. So yummy. Is it good, Ruby? That's awesome. So this is from a website called yourgenome.org. So I was looking through the Human Genome Project, and then I was looking for women in science and stumbled upon this article. So it's a profile to do with Janet Thornton. So just as like a heads up, and let's see what she's working on. So she was born in the UK on the 23rd of May, 1949. She is particularly involved in what's called bioinformatics. So it's the use of like computer software to help generate different biological things, which is especially important now when everything we need to do to predict genetics and what's going to happen and what it looks like has to do with using some sort of bioinformatics software. We used a few during my degree at school. It was really neat to be able to use them. You felt like a really real scientist when you got to use some bioinformatics software. So she's involved with a lot of that. She studied physics at the University of Nottingham. She went on to complete a master's degree in biophysics at King's College London as part of her PhD at the National Institute of Medical Research. I wanted to see sort of more of like what her things are, but she worked on the Wellcome Trust Genome Campus, which was involved in the Human Genome Project, and she's been the director of the European Bioinformatics Institute since 2001. Really cool. So just another woman in science. She works with stuff that looks at the advancement of biology through the development of open source cutting edge technology. And open source is pretty neat, meaning that people around the world can use this technology for what they have. I wonder if she worked on the stuff that I might have used. That would be kind of neat. And then specifically, because we talked a little bit about it today, her focus of her work at the Bioinformatics Institute, and it's modern science too, exactly. She looks at using bioinformatics to understand the structure and function of proteins. Let's talk about that for a second. And Laura probably knows more about this as well. Laura is currently undergoing her engineering degree in bioengineering, which is fabulously amazing, and I'm so proud of her. But I remember looking at this in maybe biochemistry, because this has a lot to do with, remember we talked about the bases, right? We talked about the bases. Those code for things. That codes the DNA, and the DNA codes for proteins. Now, during the protein creation process of when they get transcribed from the RNA, so RNA brings the message out, it like goes to the DNA and gets made from the DNA, and the RNA travels out, and it's like, yo, I'm here to make some protein. And the proteins are made based off of that RNA pattern, based off the DNA pattern. It's like the central dogma of biology, it's called. So proteins are made up of amino acids. I really want to do a stream about this because it's so cool. But amino acids we've even more of those than we do like nucleotides. There is 20, 21, 20 amino acids, 20 amino acids. That sounds right. It's been a while. Laura, tell me it. Nerding it up. Yeah, tell me. 20 amino acids. I think it's 20. But there are 20 amino acids that make up all proteins. And those amino acids have very specific properties, and they join together in a chain of lovely beads. We won't say pearls because Kristen doesn't like pearls. So they join together in a lovely, sparkly bead set of amino acids. And that amino acid chain, I'm getting really excited because it's so cool. But the way the different amino acids work with each other, like how they bond together or they repel each other, because some are positively charged, some are negatively charged, some are neutral and don't heckin' care. But if you remember sort of like magnets, right? Positive and negative, those attract. But a positive and positive, they do not. They head away from each other. I always say this is like if you had the Thomas the Engine like magnetic train set, and if you ever were like, I'm magical, and you were like pushing along your trains with like the wrong side of the train, and you could like push the train set without even touching the magnets, right? Because they repel. So there's pieces of the amino acids that repel or attract each other, and that's what like folds this incredible protein into the correct shape. For example, I'm just quickly looking up hemoglobin. Here's the protein for hemoglobin. You can kind of see it on the right-hand side. I'm not going to move my screen for you. But hemoglobin is a protein. This all is different amino acids in chains. This is a representation of it. It doesn't actually look like this, but there are amino acids that build all these chains, and the way they spiral, the way they fold, are all because of what those amino acids do and interact with each other. Now, as I was saying, back to Janet Thornton and her stuff. All right, as much as fun as science as I've been up for a long time, so I need to get some sleep, have fun sciencing. I'll watch the VOD later. Amazing, Mr. B. Have an awesome night. So good to see you. And thank you for hanging out. That was a lot of fun. Thank you for being here. I will make sure to award your 200 points for your questions today. Sorry, teacher, I wasn't paying attention. What are we talking about? Hope she doesn't get extra homework or worse detention. Don't worry, I'm going on a tangent. Good night, Mr. B. Good night. So, back to her stuff and what this is that folding process is based on so many little things that make up these proteins. Because these proteins can be anywhere from like 2 or 3 amino acids to hundreds of amino acids to make up the protein. And so the way that each and every single one of those amino acids reacts to each other is how it's folded. So to make a program, a computer program, there's a cashew here, buddy. There's a cashew right there. Go get it. To make a computer software program that predicts how a protein folds is incredible. That's an amazing piece of technology. So there's a couple things that do that. You can put in a sequence, like a DNA sequence. It'll show you what proteins, like what amino acids are going to be spit out, and then it can predict the way the protein is going to fold. And why that's important is because, of course, if your proteins are misfolded due to something like a mutation, that can sometimes lead to something like a disease, right? So if people can predict what a DNA sequence is going to fold into, it can better help create medicines, better help predict what problems might arise from it, better help make proteins that might make, I don't know, maybe one day we'll make a protein that actually like properly replicates like cheese. I don't know, you know? I don't know these things, but it's a really amazing technology. Computers can randomly fold the proteins into different shapes and measure how much energy it costs and repeat until they find what's most efficient. That might be what she's doing with her program. Yeah, so exactly what Laura has brought up is that it's very possible that what her software is doing is like rerunning all these scenarios of what this protein could look like and picking the one that is the least, I guess it's entropy? That's chemistry. But it's like the least work. The least amount of work to keep this protein in a shape is basically the one that it's going to want to pick. Very cool. So yeah, I remember looking at it a little bit in, I think, biochemistry. And it blew my mind, like seeing that there was programs that could do that. And like I said, Laura probably knows maybe even more about it. I hope so. That's pretty cool. Even more about it than I do. But I remember being pretty blown away by how we can run that kind of program and predict everything from all these little details. You're right about entropy. Yes. Yay. I'm like, I think it's entropy. Very cool. So that's Janet Thornton. So yeah, if you're an educator and you teach science, I just implore you to check in and see if you can find people who might represent students in your class who don't always get to see women in science, and use different role models. Find someone cool. Reach out to Janet Thornton. Maybe see if she's around. I don't know. But that's Janet Thornton. All right. Amazing. I still have like my Animal Crossing going in the background. We're almost there. We're going to do a trivia question. Let's see. What do I want to do a trivia question about? Okay, here's the trivia question. Laura shouldn't be able to answer, but I mean, like, she'll know it right away, but let's say someone other than Laura, even though that feels bad. That feels bad, man. All right, trivia question. If your allele will be covered up by another allele, what do we call it? What kind of allele is it if it's going to be covered up by another allele? Do, 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 do. Recessive! Yes! Dustin! Yay! Alright, Dustin, you get to spin the wheel. You get 100 treats for your recessive. I really should be writing this down. We had Mr. B. Had 200 treats. Sandra had 100 treats. Dustin now has 100 treats. And Dustin, we're going to spin the wheel. I'm going to start spinning it. And then you're going to tell me to stop. And as soon as I see your stop, pull up, I stop it. If you win the gold, you get 500 extra treats. If you land on the purple, nothing really happens, but apparently Kristen says you die. That's not happening though, I promise. Ready? Alright, tell me when to stop. Ah! Ah! Oh, okay. It did not land on the gold. But I was like, so, like, what happened was, like, Nightbot's thing popped up, so I thought it was Dustin saying stop. And so I was like, ah! And then I saw you say stop, and I was like, ah! So I double-clicked, but it did not end on the gold. But don't worry, you don't die. But unfortunately, you don't win the 500 treats. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to get it to stop at the right spot, especially because the time difference between you watching me and me reading your stop is, yeah, 5-second delay, exactly. It's very difficult. Okay. Alright, fantastic. Finally, here we are. 2 hours in, which I'm feeling pretty good about. I didn't think I'd have enough material for that, but really pretty good. We made it to 2 hours chatting about genetics. We're gonna start talking about what this has to do with Animal Crossing. The flowers and the bees. Alright? Okay, so if any of you are like me in Animal Crossing, you have thrown a bunch of flowers together into a small patch of land and you've waited to see what happens. But if you're someone like Laura, you looked into the genetics of the flowers and you decided to set it up in a little bit more of an efficient manner because you sort of understand what's happening. So I'm going to show you how to get started. It's not the best layout, but it's sort of the idea and we're going to talk about it. And then Laura's here and we're going to go take a little field trip over to Laura's island and see how her progress is going because she started doing these crosses a long time ago. And so her garden of flowers is probably looking a little bit more fantastic and maybe getting her some actual things that she needs. Whereas mine, I literally planted a few days ago. So it's sort of like the first step. 2-hour class and I haven't slept. That means your class is a success. Yes. Okay, I think I might be going to bed in a few. I'll be looking for a bit. Okay, Sandra, thank you so much for hanging out. Even more class ends. I'm telling. Just putting my head down. I'm the kid that sits in the back. Alright, here we go. Here we go. I have my controls and that's the wrong controls. Okay. Okay, Magma, get in the game. What does this have to do with Animal Crossing? Flowers. Please observe my ridiculous natural garden. I kind of already showed it to you, but please observe. Let's get out of here. Oh, I'm stuck. I made my glass. Gibbs, thank you so much for the host. I appreciate that. Welcome in. Please observe my really wacky rose garden over there. And, oh, hold on. Let's be just, oh, that's going to go in the water, isn't it? I don't think that's, like, over the land. Nope. All right, bye. Please observe my natural garden where I have done nothing sciencey except throw them in dirt. Please also observe how I made this beautiful, like, pathways, and the flowers do not abide by that at all. So we learned something new, is that flowers don't care about your path. They just don't. Okay? Whereas, let's head on back to where I'm starting my garden of science, which is a little bit more exciting. This is on a very small scale. If you're trying to do anything particular, you're going to want a bigger garden. But this is in my teaching space, and so we've made a small space. Field trip, but I didn't turn in my permission slip. Arnold! Hi, Gibbs. Doing really well, thank you. How are you? If I don't see you all again, have a good stream, as in if I fall asleep before the stream ends. Excellent, Sandra. Please do not talk to my villagers. They've been taught to curse. That's amazing. Okay, I will avoid while we're on stream. So this is my tiny garden that I'm starting. We're seeing some science in action right here. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why this is my garden of science and how this relates to the Punnett squares we've just been looking at. And we are almost there. We are almost done our science class today. So we're doing a good time. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. But there's got to be a better way than my natural garden of throwing flowers at a thing. There's got to be a better way. And there is. The flowers in Animal Crossing New Horizons obey by the same genetic rules we've just been talking about. You have been playing with science, this whole time. What? Whoa. Amazing. You're all scientists. Yes. I actually always say that though. I mean, life is science. So the fact that you're living life means that you're doing science. So there you go. Click it, add text. I can't. It's behind the flowers. That's probably why I haven't done it. Let's see. Whoops. Well. There we go. I've been doing an educate? Gross. Add all the text. Kristen was here. Kristen was here in this particular place. So yes, if you have been, well, pretty much any game you're playing, you're probably playing with something to do with science. You are playing a game that has been coded. That's computer science. But regardless of that, if you've been playing Animal Crossing and doing anything to do with flowers and trying to see what colors you get out of them, you've been playing with science. You've basically been doing what Gregor Mendel was doing, you know, hundreds of years ago, where he was throwing some peas together and seeing what the heck came out of it. Exactly that. That's what you've been doing. You've been throwing flowers together to see what happens. So luckily, we know a little bit more about how that works. And because Animal Crossing thought about it and put in some actual science, good on you, Animal Crossing, we can actually figure out what that looks like. So, here are the 4 genes that are involved in the flowers of Animal Crossing. So they have 4 different genes. Now, we only looked at a Punnett square that had 1 gene. Can you imagine a Punnett square with 4? I can, and it's gross. So we're not doing one of the 4 ones. We will try to do an example of a 3 gene Punnett square, but we'll keep it really simple. But I challenge you to figure out if you can do it. It's pretty cool. So some really important things to note here is when you're starting a garden using this principle, you're going to probably want to use the seeds from your store because they have a very specific genetic makeup that we are guaranteed when we buy the seeds. So we're guaranteed a very specific genetic makeup with just the seeds from the store. Your flowers around the island can have all sorts of combinations, but if you buy the seeds from the store, they're going to be really specific. I have hiccups from drinking my water. I apologize. So here are the 4 genes. We have an R gene, a Y gene, a W gene, and an S gene. The only flower that uses all 4 of these is roses, which what makes getting the blue rose so difficult because you are using 4 different genes. Every other flower has some combination of these 3 genes. I think we're going to particularly look at tulips today because I planted tulips and they were a little bit more simple to understand. So you have 4 different genes. The R gene is not necessarily coding for red because there's a bunch of different genes interacting here, but it's going to say whether or not your flower has a red base to its color. So for example, if you have the dominant or the capital R, so if you have 2 dominant R alleles or a dominant R allele and 1 little r, the recessive allele, you're going to have a red-based flower. So the colors for those would be things like red, black, pink, or orange. So all of those have a little bit of like a red base. If you're looking at a flower that has 2 little r's, that's a non-red flower. So those are going to get you things like yellow, white, or purple. Okay? Now that kind of makes sense, right? Because orange, of course, has a little bit of red. Pink is a little bit of red. The black's like kind of an outlier, but that makes some sense. It's just really dark, really darkly pigmented, like flower petals. But these other ones make sense. They have red in them. Yellow, white, and purple. Purple kind of has red, so that's one. It's on the edge. But you know what? We're gonna accept it as that it is. It's a game. They did their best. Okay? But just so we know, those are our colors we're getting out of here. The yellow gene, you're getting some sort of yellow flower. So if you're capital Y, or capital Y, little y, you're going to end up with a yellow or an orange flower depending on your other genes. If you don't have that, you have 2 of the recessive little y's, you're going to have a non-yellow flower of some kind. Okay. WW gene. That is like white or underlying color. So, for example, if you have a capital Y or capital W, so the dominant or one dominant, one recessive, your flower is going to be white. However, if you don't have the dominant, you have both recessives, or like, it's kind of like you don't have it at all. For this particular gene, it's a little bit different, but that's fine. If you have two little W's, you're going to be purple or blue. So purple or blue are a underlying color. So it's like they're exposed by not having the other genes. Pretty cool, right? And then there's the S gene. So the S gene is sort of like, it's only in some species, it's the shade of the red-based flowers. So for example, if you have two dominant or the two capital S's, you're going to end up with like a pink flower, and sometimes red, depending on your species. And if you have a dominant and a recessive, you're going to get a red flower. And if you have two of the recessive alleles or two little S's, you're going to end up with a black flower, or orange if you have the yellow gene. Okay? Now this sounds like really complicated because it kind of is. It's genetics. It's amazing. So if you're using this, like you're Gregor Mendeling it up. You are genetics pro. Because this is using a bunch of different genes. It gets a little bit more complicated than our monohybrid or our single gene we were looking at. But it's really cool that they use these principles. So, for example, let's take a look at what that means. By the way, this information I got from a Reddit user called Paleclaw. They came up with an amazing flower guide. I have the link here. If you're interested in this link, I will put it with the YouTube video. And if you don't watch it on YouTube or you want the link, just Discord me or DM me and I'll send you this link. But I'm pretty sure I just looked up Animal Crossing flower genetics, and I think it was like the first one. But super huge thanks to Paleclaw for writing up this guide. It gave me a lot of good things to go off of. And I also have this one, which is a little bit more simple, just from IGN. So you're explaining the science behind my windflowers. I got white and blue mainly with a few purple. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna use the example of tulips because I planted tulips. I'm going to show you those. I don't think they've done anything yet, but I planted them. And remember what I said, the important thing is here, if you're starting this, is you have to use seeds from a store, which can be difficult if you only have a few of the flowers that are like native species to your island. So if you're looking for like rose seeds, you're going to have to find someone that has rose seeds. Because otherwise, if you get roses, so say for me, where I have a pile of random roses, I have no idea what their genetic makeup is. Because like you saw, there are 4 different genes that roses have, and they are all over the place. So if you're wanting to start the process of trying to get a blue rose, like Laura is, you're going to want to try to find rose seeds. Or you immediately start your island, the flowers that are the native flowers on your island, those have a specific island makeup, but if you don't get them right away, you don't necessarily know if they're the right ones or if they were populated after like a day or two. So it's better to go by the ones in the store because you know the genetic makeup. So for tulips, for example, the seeds that you get in the store, you can get red, yellow, or white. The red seeds for tulips, now tulips use the R, the Y, and the S gene. So they don't use the W gene. R, Y, and S only. So we have a red gene, a red seed, sorry. We have a yellow seed, and we have a white seed. The red seeds, we have a specific gene makeup. We have 2 dominant R's for the red. We have 2 recessive yellow genes, and we have R dominant and recessive in the S gene. And then the yellow, of course, has its specifics. White has its specifics. And here are some of the sort of more common combinations that you're going to get from these ones. What about the flowers on Mystery Islands? Would those have the same genetic makeup as store seeds? No, that's a super great question. In the flower guide, I could probably open it up for you. Remember, this is not mine. I did not write this. This is Paleclaw on Reddit. And I don't know if, oh yeah, you can see it pretty well. So this is a huge document that they've made, which is amazing, based on the Mendelian genetics of Gregor Mendel, we've been talking about, using Punnett squares. And they have gone through a huge amount of work to put this together, so kudos to them. But they do have down here, like safer roses, so they have a big list of the rose stuff. I know that's more of a game coding question. No, it's great because this is when we start talking about the Animal Crossing. So they have done the work for us, and if you go to a mystery island, you're gonna find orange or pink. I don't know if there's more, but they've only listed the orange and pink for the roses, and this is the genetic makeup. So they do have them, and then you're just going to the mystery island. So if you find a mystery island with roses on it, then that is the genetic one you're looking at. And then the rest of them do have their ones as well. So they're definitely there. And most of them have a specific genetic makeup that they can give you. So if you're getting them from a mystery island, just make sure you aren't like planting them on your island right away and like letting them do whatever they want, because then you don't know, like anything they duplicate, you don't know the genetics yet on them. So make sure you like know what you're doing with them right away and plan it out. But yeah, so they are there. So again, I'll post the link in my Discord after this. So Dustin, you're in my Discord, so if you want to know or you want to look at this in a bit more detail, I'll post it in there for you. Otherwise, it'll be if this is a YouTube video, it'll be down below in the explanation. Wow, I don't do YouTube videos, so that was really interesting. Okay, so yeah, we're going to look at tulips, and we're going to just look at some simple stuff, because I'm going to show you an example here in a second. But let's say we have a red and yellow tulip, and they come from the seeds specifically. So there's kind of like a 50% chance you're getting an orange tulip with this makeup. Okay? So that's a combination that we tend to get if we have a red and yellow mixed together. And we're going to look at what that looks like as well. Red and red, if you have two red tulips next to each other, you can get black, and it's about a 25% chance, but that's how you get a black tulip. If you want a pink tulip, you need to put a red and white next to each other. It's another 50% chance of getting a pink flower. The rest of the time you might get red, you might get white. Oh, I've been talking a lot. This is fun. And then to get a purple tulip, you're looking at, you need an orange and an orange. You're going to have to breed an orange. So breed these orange ones, and then take those orange and cross them together to get a purple. And that's how you get a purple with our dominant R's, dominant Y's, and recessive S's. But there's only a 6.25% chance of getting the purple. So it can take a few days. So it's amazing they did all this. It's pretty cool, because let me show you what a Punnett square for a tri-hybrid cross or a 3-gene cross, so what we're looking at, kind of looks like this. Now, if you were sitting there and doing a Punnett square for each of these, this is incredible. So there's probably a program out there that maybe makes Punnett squares for you. I don't know. We should find out at the end, maybe. But it's really amazing. But this is huge. So this is a tri-hybrid cross, meaning it's 3 genes. So we have A, B, and D for our particular genes in this photo that I have. Basically, you take whatever parent 1 has, whatever parent 2 has, and you have to find every single combination of a recessive and dominant if they have one of each kind of deal. Now, if you know the parents, this can be a lot smaller. Like if we know the parents have both are dominant, both are recessive, like it's not going to be as big of a deal. But if they're all the dominant and recessive, they have one of each for every single gene, the table is huge. So it's a lot of work. But luckily you don't have to do that every time. And we don't necessarily need to know that every time, but that is sort of what a tri-hybrid cross kind of looks like. So just clicking back to here, we're going to look at tulips. So if you look in-game, let's see which ones I got. Which ones do I want to pick here? Okay, so I've got a couple different options for my tulips. I'm trying to cross red and white, and I've got yellow and red. So if you remember, yellow and red gets us orange, and let me click back in. I can't remember the other one. The white and red would get us pink. Okay, so let's try doing a couple crosses of these ones and see how it goes. It's gonna be a good time. Okay, so we've got red and yellow and red and white. Now we know, so let's take, I wonder if I can, I'd like to like have this somewhere, but actually I could pull up the flower guide for myself to look at. That might be easiest. Let's have it up on that side. We're going to go to this whiteboard, take a look at our Bob friends again. And I'm just going to down tulips. There's my tulips. There we go. Parfait. Ugh. Everything is messy. Everything is messy. Okay. All right. So back into this. Let's move aside so we get some space here. And hopefully I know where I'm writing. Let's see. Where can I see it? Can I see that? Parfait. Okay. I know that. Kind of looking at that. Just trying to see where you can see the screen. Okay, so we have our tulips, we have red, and we have yellow. Let's look at those ones first. So we know we have one parent that I got from the seed. So I bought these or was given these from the store. I don't remember if Laura gave me tulips or if I bought those from the store. But let's say we have our red seeds. Again, I'm sorry about not having a pen today. And our yellow. I might only do one of these for you so we can go to Laura's island. So bear with me while I get this. Little s, little s. Everything is cool when we're part of a team. Everything is awesome when we're living on a dream. Thanks for the Kirby snack, kids. I planned to just stop by for a few minutes, but you're talking about one of my favorite sciences, so I'm staying. Yay! I'm so glad. Thank you for the Kirby snack, Gibbs. Okay. So, now, the big challenge here is coming up with the combinations of each of them. So, for this particular one, we have two of the same here, two of the same here, but the only difference here is this last one. So that's really nice for us, is that we don't have to worry too much. I want to see if I can get a little bit closer there. There we go. We don't have to worry too much about coming up with a million combinations because we know no matter what, from this parent, they're going to get a capital R, they're going to get a little y, I'll make that a little more scripty, and they're either going to get a dominant S, or the only other option is to have the capital Y, little s, or little y, oh my gosh, capital R, little y, little s. So there's only two options that way. That's not too bad. So our Punnett square is going to look not super rough. On this side, it's even easier, right? Our yellow seeds, no matter what, you're going to get a little r. You're going to get a big Y, because it's yellow. And you're going to get a little s. And that's the only option, because they only have one type of allele. They don't have two types. So then we can make a really nice, simple Punnett square that does not look at that like that ridiculous thing we were looking at. That's only going to have two types here. You're either going to get the capital R, little r, the big Y, little y, and the big S, little s. And the other option is the big R, r, big Y, little s, little s. Okay, so now, as you can see, there are two genetic options here. We either have our one that has a dominant and a recessive of each gene, or we have the one that has a dominant recessive for R and Y, but the S is both recessive. So for this particular one, we're looking for orange in this one. So to get orange, we need this combination. This one here, which is one out of two options. So we have a 50% chance of our red seed and our yellow seed reacting together, reproducing to create orange flowers. The other 50% of the time, a capital R, capital Y, little y, and a big S. Gotta think about this. That would probably be maybe red again or pink again. Very possible. So it would probably be something, it would probably just be another red flower. There's a table in here as well. I could pull that up too so we can look at it. There is a table in the document that we're looking at here where it shows you like all the gene possibilities, which is also really helpful. So that's it here. Can we see it? That is the question. Yes, we can. Okay. So this is like a table of like all the different genes and what colors it turns into, which is pretty incredible. So we had capital R, capital Y, little y. Although it's only 3 genes, so I think this is roses. We're looking at tulips. It's along the bottom of the spreadsheet here. Again, this is from Pale Claw, really amazing. But here is the capital R, capital Y, capital S, little s. This ends up being yellow. So we get a yellow out of that instead of an orange. So there's a 50% chance of getting orange flowers, a 50% chance of getting yellow flowers. And if we want orange, we're waiting for that 50% chance of orange. Awesome? So yeah, that's how we use a Punnett square with flowers in Animal Crossing. And that's how it relates to genetics. Pretty cool. So before we do a quick tour of Laura's island and see how her flowers are doing, my last biography of the day, or my last sort of scientist profile, oh my lord, is Georgia May Dunstan. She is also another sort of modern day geneticist, and she works particularly, she looks at disease work to do with genetics, but she also looks at a lot of things of separating race from genetics. A lot of the things that she talks about is how growing up, there was a lot of talk about how race was to do with different genetic diseases, and how the biases, of course, that have gone on through history have led to treating different diseases as being like a black or white disease, which Georgia May Dunstan works a lot on trying to separate those things of being like, no, it's just the area that you're in and the population that you're in. It's not necessarily like we have different genes, you know? So very amazing work. I have the link here. I might post this presentation if you're interested in learning more about these people. But she's done some amazing work. She has degrees from different universities. She has a degree in biology, a Master of Science in biology. She studied her PhD in human genetics, and she's been in charge of a couple different places. She was director of Human Immunogenics Laboratory in 1985 at Howard University. What else? She, has done so many things. She's in a lot of different places. She was inspired by the Human Genome Project and focused on genetic heritage of the African American population, is what it's reading here. So, and her work in human genetics and diversity resulted in her founding the National Human Genome Center at Howard in 2001. So she has a heckin' ton of stuff here, and a really neat person. Again, another modern scientist, another role model that if you're ever teaching students or anything, bringing in role models that kids can actually relate to, which is a really huge piece. So yeah, another really neat scientist to look into. And just, she studied some really awesome things. Her interviews that she does are really cool as well, where she just talks about why she does what she does. Highly recommend. All right, should we do one last wheel spin? I gotta think of a question. We didn't talk about too much other than flowers and Animal Crossing. So how about this? First person to answer, what do I call the cross when it has 3 genes? So what kind of Punnett square cross is it when we have to use 3 genes? For the final wheel spin of the evening. For 100 treats for the answer, 500 treats if you land on gold. Try hybrid! Nice! Kristen! Thank you for listening, Kristen. I appreciate that. All right, Kristen, you get 100 treats for that. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for that follow. Welcome to the park. Thank you so much, Ternova Labs. That's so awesome. I'm gonna die. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. Yay! Okay, let's do it. Final wheel spin of the evening. Let's see if Kristen can win us that. Oh, by the way, here's my hyacinths. It looks like we're getting a yellow out of there. I was gonna look up the chance of that, because I'm not sure. I guess it's red and yellow, so it might be 50% again. I've been lurking, but I hope everything has been well. Thank you so much, Dylan, for the lurk. My head hurts. Science isn't for me. It's for everybody. You live science for me, but yes, don't worry. It's okay. You can breathe. We're just talking about flowers. You're okay. But you live science. Everyone is a scientist. I've been lurking. Oh yeah, read that. Thanks, Dylan. I hope your day's been really good too. All right, here we go. I'm gonna start the spin. Okay, Kristen, let me know when to stop. Stop! Yes! We were so in sync. Kristen, 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 Kristen. You survived and you win an extra 500 treats. Yay! Thank you for the lurk, Dylan. And yeah, welcome to the park, Trinova. Nice. I like it. The last spin of the day. Okay, Laura, are you out there? We want to come and visit and see your beautiful flowers. End off the stream by seeing another scientist building their flower genetics garden. Hopefully Laura is still listening, otherwise I'll throw her a text. But yay! I'm so glad that we landed on a actual win for that wheel. Gate is open! Yes! Okay, I'm on my way. I'm excited. I am excited. And I was gonna leave us some time to maybe chat about some genetics today. So give us a few minutes. If you have any genetics questions you want to ask or you want to look into today, I understand that our brains are probably pretty tired. So if you don't have any questions, it's totally okay. But if you have anything interesting you want to ask, let me know. And we can spend a few minutes sort of researching or looking that up. Otherwise, my voice is starting to die. And I would love to maybe head to bed. But if you have some questions, I'm here. The flowers breed very, very slowly when you restrict them as much as I have. Yeah, 100%. It takes a while. Okay, I want to visit someone. I want to do online play. Gotcha. Orville, you're the bomb. Roger. Do 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 do. But hopefully you folks had fun today. I really enjoyed it. This was a good time. I'm really glad that we got to this point where I actually am doing a stream about science. I hope you can tell that I'm really excited about it. Search for a friend. Do 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 do. And what should we do? We're flying to Booty, everybody. Let's fly. Oh dear, sorry about the island name. That's okay. I totally forgot until I read it. Gave me a good laugh. Gave me a good laugh. I love it. I love it. But yeah, what do you think we should do on the next one? I was thinking of doing some, talk of like artificial intelligence stuff, but I've had so many ideas just starting this today that there's a lot of different ones I could do. I would love to do some on ocean science. I also thought about doing one particularly about animal behavior using like the Planet Zoo, talking a bit about like Jane Goodall's work and things like that. Would love to do one on space. Would love to do more on genetics and more on things like proteins, things like health science, that kind of thing. Would love to do some where I do some experiments, but it's a little bit hard to do in my room, so I apologize for that. My favorite science is animal science. Okay, yeah, so like behavioral science or like physiology, like how they work. Booty. It's the island of Booty. Oh my gosh, there's Laura. You're looking cute. Okay, your island's looking cute. Look at all these flowers. Alright, ready to see an island that is much better than mine. Okay. Visiting scientist. I think, is my thing scientist? I think I'm like science enthusiast. Is that my title? I don't remember what my title is. I love both, but I guess my preference is behavior. Okay, sweet. I was really thinking that would be a really interesting stream to check out a couple different games. Greetings, fellow scientist. Yes! I love it. That's awesome. How do I clap? There we go. Alright, let's follow Laura in her fantastic science costume. I love it. But yeah, I was thinking about doing a couple different games like Planet Zoo and some other maybe games that are based on like how animals behave and sort of observing how they decided on those behaviors in the games, how they researched them, and just talking about animal behavior in general. So I thought that would be a pretty good one, and there's so many cool scientists to profile. Okay. I like the stars. Okay, so what do the stars represent? Wow, okay. So this is obviously her work with the roses to try to get the blue rose. So when you do the behavioral one, can it be earlier? I'm usually, yes, Kristen. Yes, it will be earlier. Today was a little bit later because I had plans earlier and everything. But yeah, it'll be earlier during the day for sure. Yeah. Okay, so this is to mark pedigree. Okay. Like the little stars. Okay. That's a good idea. Okay, so we've got your purple roses, I guess? Or are they black? Are those considered black roses or purple roses? Do we have purple roses? I don't know enough about the rose genetics. Or the rose types. Because I just sort of threw my roses in one spot. And let them survive. But this is the intensity that has to go with you trying to get a blue rose. Step 1, purple from white. Okay, so all these white roses to get us purple. And then looking at our advanced flowers genetic guide here. Where's our roses? Here's the roses. To get blue, you need a hybrid red with a hybrid red. So an orange and a purple gets you a hybrid red. Okay. So, is this orange? These yellow roses? Or are you trying a different method? Or is it... Oh, this is black and yellow to get orange. That's what... Is that what's happening? Laura's gonna explain it. We're gonna let her explain. Tell us what we got here, Laura. I'm guessing this is, so I'm just going to pull this over so you guys can see the one I'm looking at here. But we're looking at the rose guide very quickly. Oops, unless Laura's talking to me. I'm so sorry, Laura. Hold on. Nope, she's still thinking. Okay, we're okay. We're okay, but if you look at the rose guide, so these are probably, she's probably at the stage with the black and yellow making orange. And then you need to take the orange and a purple, which comes from your crossing two white roses. Oh my lord. And then your orange and your purple gets you hybrid red. Wow. And then the hybrid red plus a hybrid red is the only possible way to get blue, and it is literally a 1.6% chance of getting blue from that cross, or 1 in 64. So going for the blue rose is the gardening feat of the Animal Crossing century. I'm trying to get certain pedigrees for better probabilities. Okay. Alright. Okay. That sounds pretty sweet. So you're trying to like narrow down so you know their genetics a little bit more. Very cool. So, this is what a pro Animal Crossing geneticist looks like, people. This is how it looks. My tiny little garden showed you a little bit of just how I'm messing around with different flowers and just trying to see what I get out of it. But if you're going for that blue rose and you're trying to be that super Gregor Mendel or super Janet Thornton or super super Rosalind Franklin's. She wasn't really working with geneticists. She's more like a chemist, but you know. And you know, your super Georgia May Dunstans. This is the kind of work that you need in Animal Crossing here. This is legit 2 months of work. Yeah, this is a lot of work, but super amazing. Oh, what's this? A gift? A present? That's really cool. Yeah, this is super cool. Very cool. And of course, like I said, Laura and I, what present is this? Laura and I did our biology degrees together. Open. A meme shirt. Whoa. That's how you end it. That's how you end a stream. With a meme shirt. Thank you, Laura. But yes, this was really fantastic. Does anybody have any genetics questions before I call it an evening? And we see you tomorrow for a writing stream, but we'll see you next Science Around video stream day and whatever topic we decide to do. But if there's any other genetics questions I can answer now, fantastic. Otherwise, once again, if you want to hang out in my Discord and ask questions, there's my Discord. And you can ask there. If this is the YouTube video, wow, you can always post in the comments. That feels weird saying. But you can always post in the comments and I'll get back to you there. Science is complicated, but that's not a question. True. But anyone can do flowers. There are so many great guides. Yes, there are so many great guides to this. Like I said, the one that I was looking at, I will 100% post the link for that. So you can go there and check that out if you want to try this. Otherwise, look up Animal Crossing's and Genetics, Animal Crossing's Blue Rose Guide, whatever you're looking for to do. If you're looking for the genetics portion, this was great. If you're looking for just that blue rose, go with the guide. Save yourself the Punnett squares. But thank you so much for joining today. Fashion show in the background, I know. Not a question, but thank you for the stream. It was fun. Thank you for being here, Dustin. Let's do a really quick. I don't think I put any thank yous on here, but let's do a really quick thank you. Thank you for that follow, Trinova Labs. I really appreciate that. Welcome in. Frost, thank you for resubbing again at 11 months. Amazing. And I had a host of hosts today, so thank you all for those hosts. And just thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating, enjoying, and answering questions, and having fun with science with me today. We will see you next time. Thank you, Laura, for allowing me your island space. Okay, Kirby says goodnight. He wants to go to bed. Bye, everybody. Mwah. Have a fantastic evening. Happy flower planting and geneticsing. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.